like to call this meeting to order, and we'll start with a land acknowledgement.
Thank you, through you, sir. The lands we know today as the Township of Centre Wellington have been home to Indigenous people since time immemorial. We acknowledge that we're on the treaty lands and traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee. With increasing encroachment by non-Indigenous settlers in the Township of Centre Wellington, the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee could not continue their traditional lifestyle and settled in their villages along the Credit River and in the Grand River Valley. These Indigenous nations uphold their treaty rights within our jurisdiction. Today, the Township of Centre Wellington remains home to Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We are grateful to have the opportunity to share and to respect Mother Earth and are committed to building constructive and cooperative relationships with Indigenous nations.
Thank you, Councillor Evite. We'll move down to addendums and corrections to the agenda. There are none. Disclosure of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Any disclosure? And remember, too, at any time, if you feel that you're at a point where you have to issue some disclosure of pecuniary interest, you can issue at that any time. So just a friendly reminder of that. So and we'll move down to delegations. Nope. And consideration of reports. We are going to item 7.1, new Township Operations Center update, and we have Brendan Buehler here to welcome up and carry us through that. And disguised as Brendan is Colin.
Yes, surprise. Yeah, I'm just going to provide a couple of introductory remarks and then hand it over to Brandon and the rest of the project team to go through the rest of the presentation. So, good afternoon, Mayor Waters and members of council. Just very pleased to be here today to present an update on the Township Operations Center project. This new Operations Center will really be the first of its kind in the township and across Wellington County. To start off our presentation today, I'd just like to highlight just a few of the project pillars so that have been foundational in guiding the design for the Operations Center through this phase of the project. So through this project, we are minimizing greenhouse gas emissions and being a model site for low impact development through water efficiency, water conservation. And in the presentation, we'll be providing more details on what that looks like through the facility. We are protecting our community's source of drinking water from impacts of de-icing or road salts and stormwater runoff. Through this project, we are preserving and adding to the township's forest canopy through the protection and preservation of the existing arboretum and inclusion of a significant number of tree plantings on site. Through this project, we're investing in community well-being and wellness. This project is quite unique in the context of operation centers in the sense that it includes things like community gardens, extensive on-site trail network. It will have bike racks and storage lockers, green space. These aspects are included in the scope of the project and in the budget as well. We're also preparing for community population and employment growth. So this facility will help us maintain service levels as our community grows, from snow plowing to the provision of drinking water to the information technology systems that we rely on daily. This facility will help the township in maintaining these essential services for the community into the future. We're also improving safety for visitors to the facility, to our facilities and staff. Areas for heavy equipment movements have been separated from publicly accessible areas. Through this facility, we are serving the community. There's accessibility or AODA kind of worked into the facility, is fully accessible. There's proper washrooms and change room facilities at this site. There's opportunities for community meeting room space, training facility, and a one-window approach to customer service. And also through this project, and you'll see later on in the report, we have a financial strategy too that will minimize the burden to the tax rate. So that was a foundational part of this project to ensure that the growth or of the project are funded through the development charges, and non-growth components, or things that were generally replacement, are funded through reserve funds and proceeds from land sales. And as we'll discuss a little bit more detail, there's 5 township properties specifically listed in the report that we're looking at divesting. And so certainly we've got more details in the presentation. And at this time, I would like to introduce the project team members and the presenters today, whom you've met this morning as well, but I think we'll introduce them here in council chambers as well. So we've got Adam Gilmore, Manager of Engineering, Brandon Buehler, our Operations Center Project Manager, Martin Tamlin, who's fairly new with us, and we're throwing him right into the fire here. So Martin, our new climate change coordinator, James Homewood, senior estimator from Ball Construction, and Jeff Miller from RDH Architects, who's our architect on the project. And you're going to hear from Adam McNabb as well later in the presentation. And I'd be remiss to also to not acknowledge the internal steering committee. There's a lot of staff that have been involved to get us this point. So I just want to thank that group, from clerks, IT, water services, public works, the building department, planning, and community services. They're probably watching or listening later. So thank you to this group, and just want to extend a big thank you for all your feedback on the project. So with that, presentation slides. And there we go. There we go. Okay, so the purpose of the presentation today is to provide council with an update on sustainability and green building features, to seek council endorsement on the recommended exterior design concept to carry forward into detailed design, and also to present the Class D cost estimate for inclusion in the 2025 capital budget. So I've just got a few slides here, just some quick background on the project. So we do have a number of existing works facilities. As we all know, we're a product of amalgamation in 1999, 25 years ago now. And so we have those historic facilities, and some of them are more than 100 years old. The office, Pilkington office, I don't know the date of that one, but it's probably 1860s or something. It's quite an old farmhouse that we're in there, but attached to that is the shop. So these facilities are at or above capacity and getting to the end of their service life. So something had to be done. So this whole process started back in 2004, where there was a public works strategic operations study, and so there was a plan to basically bring all offices together through that report. So all public works facilities and under one roof, and then just further along the timeline in 2005, when we had the tornado, for those that were around in August of 2005, had the tornado go through the northern part of Fergus, starting kind of around County Road 7 area. And we had some impacts as a township. The nickel shop was destroyed and never replaced at that time. The property was sold off shortly after that. Also, through the budget, the Operations Center has been a line item, I'd say, in our 10-year capital. So we've had a vision of this for quite some time, and I'd say kind of in 2018, the visions, got much further honed down. We were going to have a centralized ops with an east and a west presence for efficiency of operations. So we looked at one central facility, but still maintain one site in Elora, and then our West Gary facility too, just because we are a large township geographically, and from an efficiency of providing service to our rural residents, it makes sense still to have like an east and west presence. So also, this was the Operations Center was referenced in the previous council's strategic plan as well. And with that, we get into a study that we started in 2020 and finished in 2021 called a Space Needs Study. So Adam's going to step up to the podium and provide a bit of an overview of the results of that study, because that's really informing what we're building today. So, Adam, over to you.
Yes, thanks very much, Colin. So yeah, the Space Needs Study really got us going in the planning for this facility. So that study included an evaluation of options to satisfy space needs to the 2041 timeframe, along with defining what those space needs were at the time. 8 options were considered with high-level costing, and the options range from do nothing, so continue operating at our existing facilities, to expand at our existing facilities, to expanding at a new facility. The preferred option was to construct a new operations center on a 20-acre central site in 2 phases. And the new facility would include staff from infrastructure services, corporate services, community services. So as Colin mentioned, this is a multi-department facility. So next slide. So the 2 phases that were envisioned for construction in the space needs, the first would be to construct a full administrative office, an exterior works yard and outdoor operations areas, and garage buildings with heated and unheated storage bays, a workshop, maintenance bays, vehicle wash bay, and greenhouses. Then the second phase, which would occur approximately 10 years after the first phase, would be to add to the garage areas for growth in the fleet, and to also include a new salt storage and loading facility. So currently we have salt storage and loading at the Fergus East Works Garage, and so the phase plan here would be that, you know, we would hang on to that salt storage facility for a while, and then we would construct a new one at this facility in about 10 years, and then we could either keep or do away with the existing facility at Fergus East. Additional greenhouses would also be added in phase 2, as well as a staff training facility. So then on the previous council's endorsement of the preferred option, staff completed an evaluation of potential sites for a new operations center. So we needed a 20-acre parcel of property. So 8 locations were looked at. It was shortlisted to 4 locations, and then based on the results of a detailed evaluation, the preferred site that was recommended by staff was the 965 Gartshore Street site. Some advantages of this site had relatively flat topography. It had been used historically for agriculture, so it was characterized as a greenfield site, so low chance of encountering any type of environmental issues with the site. It satisfied our space requirement. It was located in the Fergus urban area, close to the Fergus urban area, centrally located. Had municipal services already essentially there at the doorstep. And so council authorized the purchase of that site in October of 2021. So the next step in planning for development of the site was to complete a site development study. So this was completed in 2023. And this was really to kind of complete those foundational studies needed to develop the site and to complete rezoning of the site. So the site was previously zoned for agricultural use. It needed to be rezoned for industrial use. And this provided us an opportunity to complete a lot of the foundational studies needed to develop the site. I won't list all the studies here, but it was quite extensive. This project included traffic studies, noise studies, archaeological assessments, cultural heritage evaluations, and then finally the planning justification report, which kind of laid the groundwork for the rezoning. Yeah, so the site was successfully rezoned from agricultural to industrial. And through discussions in this planning stage of the project, staff identified an opportunity to propose moving the planning and development department to the site also. So in the 2021 space needs assessment, planning and development department was not included in the space needs, but we looked at it as an opportunity to provide for some additional space for growth here at this facility. It would free up space by moving the planning and development department to the operations center, and we thought this was a good opportunity. And then through discussions with council, you'll recall there was also an interest in reducing the administrative building footprint by adding a second story to that building. And here you can see this is the old rendering that we first presented to you in March of 2023, showing that single-story administration building. And council expressed an interest in perhaps making that two-story building and opening up some green space or space for community use. So then we set out to procure a design builder for the detailed design of the facility. So staff did some research on different project delivery models, and what we landed on was this modified design build delivery model that had been successfully used by other municipalities for similar projects. And so we issued an RFP. And we awarded the contract to Ball Construction, who assembled a team along with RDH Architects and Burnside. And through this model, Ball Construction is referred to as our construction manager, design builder. So they're the ones that are really leading the design, assembling this team. They're kind of our one point of contact. And being in the construction world, they have obviously a great understanding of how these facilities are built. And so really, a great multidisciplinary team to develop the design. And the project, there are two phases happening. So the first phase, which is in process, is developing the detailed design, the tender package for all the work assignments, and then issuing the tender, and then coming up with a very important number referred to as the guaranteed maximum price. So this is the price that the project will not exceed, provided there are no major scope changes. And so that's the phase that we're in currently. We're in process of developing, the budgets for the project, and then eventually this guaranteed maximum price. The guaranteed maximum price, I'll reiterate this a few times during the presentation, but I think this is really important for council to understand. The project is not approved for construction until the guaranteed maximum price is approved by council. And we do plan on coming back in the January-February timeframe to present that guaranteed maximum price to council for approval. That will then get us to the second phase of the project, which is the construction. Just want to acknowledge here in the Township's 2024 business plan, an action item was to complete the design, grading, and site servicing for the operations center. So that those works are well underway, where the design is in process. Some of the site servicing work has already been completed, so the services have been extended to the site. Site grading and the remaining services will be included with the construction contract for council's approval, and planned to be started right now in the spring of 2025. Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to Brandon Buehler now. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Mayor and Council. So I just want to take a few minutes here to go over the sustainability features that we're incorporating into the design. So understanding the importance of protecting our environment and reducing our carbon footprint, the following sustainability and green building features are being incorporated into the design. So landscape and low impact development, tree protection and conservation, naturalized stormwater management, rainwater harvesting, solar power generation, electric vehicle charging stations, sustainable building materials, reducing on-site natural gas consumption, and dark sky compliant, basically the ensuring the exterior lighting it meets the design requirements and LED lighting. So noting that it is important that all of these features are environmentally sustainable, but they will also ensure that the site and the buildings function efficiently which will result in operational savings. So here we'll just quickly go over kind of the layout of the site plan. And just for direction purposes, Gartshore we'll assume is north-south. So to the left of the drawing, that'd be north, to the right will be south. So in the southeast corner, we've got the Arboretum, where we were on site earlier today. We were kind of showing the space that is heavily forested. We are going to maintain as much of that as we can. And directly beside that is where we plan to house the community gardens for community use. And then you can see in the parking lot, the center median is designed to be a vegetated LED area. So we'll have shrubs, trees, grass, an area for to promote infiltration. As well on the east side and the west side of the site, you'll see that we're including vegetated swales as well. Again, a chance to promote infiltration. And then at the north end of the site, we have the reforestation area. So any tree removals that occur on site to support the development, we've dedicated a space to be able to have some compensation trees in that space. You'll see the stormwater management pond adjacent to that area. And actually, just for references, just north of that, just off the site, you can see the building outline for where our well F6 is located as well. Along the westerly property limit there, you'll see there's a berm that will serve in the future, potentially having a noise wall to help any noise mitigation between future development of those lands to the west. And then a nice trail network that will meander through along the south and west portions of the site and into the stormwater management pond. So the key objectives of the landscaping and LID features is to reduce the impacts to stormwater quality and quantity. This will be achieved by using natural-based features such as rain gardens, permeable pavers, green roofs, and rainwater harvesting. As I pointed out on the site plan, the existing arboretum in the southeast corner of the site will be maintained to the extent possible. The reforestation area up at the northwest corner will give us an opportunity to compensate for any of those trees that are removed at a ratio of 2 to 1. These trees, we'll have trees also planted throughout the site, and these trees will help provide shade and help lower the temperature in the parking lot. And over time, these trees will be able to provide shade over the building as well. Trees will also help with stormwater runoff and the prevention of soil erosion. So with the well F6 being located just north of the site, extra considerations are being incorporated into the design of the stormwater management pond, such as we plan to line the pond with an impervious liner to prevent infiltration and to protect the groundwater quality. We'll also be installing monitoring wells to ensure that infiltration is not occurring within this stormwater management pond. An oil grit separator is proposed at the inlet of the pond to prevent any oils or sediment from entering the pond. And we'll be selecting seed mixes at the perimeter of the pond to act as a natural filter and include native trees and shrubs as well. So the design will include a rainwater harvester, which will collect and divert rainwater to the holding tank. The water from the holding tank can then be used to irrigate landscape areas such as community gardens, as well as the greenhouses. Rainwater will also be used in the vehicle wash bay as well. So by utilizing this rainwater will result in operational savings as well as preserving our municipal water. So the building orientation has been carefully considered and to optimize the sun exposure for solar power. The garage space is also being designed to include a sloped roof, which is ideal for solar panel installation. The capacity of the solar system is still being designed and will be determined as the design progresses. The current estimate does not include a solar system. However, once the requirements of the system has been determined, a cost estimate will be prepared and presented to council for further consideration. Staff are also exploring third-party funding partners who offer different financing models for these types of systems, some which include full or partial ownership of the solar infrastructure. So electric vehicle charging stations. So right now we're proposing level 2 EV stations. And they'll be both located in the front parking lot for where the staff and public will be accessible to. As well, we're planning to install them in the back for fleet charging. So currently we're looking at around 5 units for each area, and we'll have provisions into the design for future expansion as well. So sustainable building materials. The building is being designed to include an efficient layout with emphasis on maximizing the space requirements. Building materials such as durable wall assemblies, higher insulating values in the roof, walls, and overhead doors, and triple glazed windows are being incorporated into the design. The design team are looking for ways that some of that existing barn material can also be reused and incorporated into the design. So big emphasis on trying to reduce the on-site natural gas consumption and greenhouse gas emissions that this building will have. So the project team will be meeting with Enbridge Gas, who offer free consultation and will prepare an energy model to help identify energy efficiencies, which will then build into our design and construction of the facility. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jay from Ball Construction.
Hey, everybody. You have to bear with me for a moment here. So just talking about LEED certification. So LEED is a globally recognized third-party green building design rating system. LEED certification, it's a point-based process with 4 different levels of certification based on the number of points earned. LEED is that it provides a framework for sustainable design that must be followed throughout the design and the construction of any given facility in order to achieve the predetermined target for certification. The other big advantage is that LEED certification is well recognized. A couple of the disadvantages of LEED certification, that's typically it's higher upfront capital costs. It usually extends the project schedule, both the design and construction. And one important thing to note is that cost-effective, sustainable design can be achieved without pursuing LEED certification. Figured it out. That's what I was worried about. Passive house certification. This is another third-party certification path. But what's a little bit different with Passive House compared to LEED is that LEED is more of a holistic approach to sustainable design, and Passive House focuses more on construction methods and materials to produce energy efficient, high performing buildings. Emphasis is more put on a tight building envelope and also that works in conjunction with high performing mechanical electrical systems. Which ends up resulting in an overall energy consumptions that are lower and also lower operating costs. While there is a prescriptive path for passive house design in commercial projects, a majority of the projects that are passive house certified are more in the residential sector. To date, there are no public operations centers constructed in North America that follow the passive house certification framework. This specific project does not lend itself well to passive house certification. For instance, there's a number of large overhead doors in the shop space that would make it difficult to meet the requirements of passive house. For these few reasons here and others, the project team have chosen not to pursue LEED or passive house certification. It's one really important note is that neither of these certifications are prerequisites for any grant funding that may be available for this project. I'll now pass it over to our project design principal, Jeff Miller from RDH Architects.
Thank you, Jay, and good afternoon. So I just press this button, I guess, the right button. There we go. So council members, I believe, will all be familiar with this drawing, which we looked at earlier today on our site tour, but I'll run through it once more at a high level to build on the information Brandon outlined about green site development. So here you can see that the main building, the new main operations center, is an L-shaped structure with two wings. The wing on facing the public parking lot on the south side of the site is the administration wing, and then the volume running perpendicular to that towards the north of the site, the left side of the page, is the operations wing containing the workshops and storage programs. The arboretum, the community gardens, and the protected storm pond and reforestation area at the south and north ends of the site, respectively, Brandon has already mentioned. Those are obviously very important parts of our architectural design as well. And the plan is to really integrate the new building, in particular the public-facing administrative side of the building, with these green spaces and with the farmhouse in order to make a really high-quality new amenity space for both the public and for works yard staff. In terms of the scope of construction, phase one will include the new operations building, a greenhouse, which will be just to the north of the farmhouse, you can see on this plan. A cold storage shed right in the middle of the shaded part of the works yard, which indicates the gravel area rather than asphalt. And a fuel island, which is just to the Gartshore Street side of that new storage shed. It'll also include, as Brendan mentioned, a new berm along the west edge of the site where the trail network crosses, and a new multi-use trail around three sides of the site, outside of the works yard fence, and a stormwater management pond. Future development structures will include a salt and sand shed, a second greenhouse, and expansions to both the cold storage building and the main operations building. Here we see an aerial 3D rendering of the building design as it currently stands. Looking at the whole site from the east side, the corner of the site where the main public and staff vehicle entry would be located. You can see here clearly the two wings of the main building defined by different materials, in this image at least, and we'll talk about this in just a moment. The public-facing wing, the office structure, is clad in brick, and the sort of back half of the building, the operations wing, is clad in metal. There are connections or a kind of overlook of this new building into that public green space, which you can see sort of between the building and the farmhouse, that we refer to as the courtyard. And you can also see here that the building is now conceived as a two-story structure in that front wing to preserve footprint, give more space to landscaping, and integrate the planning department within the program. Just a few words about the operations side of the building, something that we at RDH Architects really pride ourselves on, having worked on about a dozen of this type of building over the last 15 years or so, is treating all of the workspaces, not just the offices, but all of the workshops and storage spaces as important work areas that need to be comfortable, efficient, well daylit, and clean and modern places for people to work, places where people can really take pride in working. So none of these spaces will be a forethought, although obviously they will share the character of these images that are on screen and be industrial spaces. We do put a lot of effort into making them pleasant and especially functional and efficient places to work. I'll talk for a moment about material options. There's two pretty simple variations we're working with at the moment so that we're exploring for the outside of the public-facing wing, the administration wing. This first option is informed by the heritage impact assessment that was conducted as part of the site planning study completed last year in 2023. That assessment identified the farmhouse as a structure of historic significance and included a recommendation that that structure be designed to fit into the site's historic cultural context. So this slide shows the general approach to materials that this first option would comprise, with a red brick cladding that would be meant to have a very similar color and feel to the red brick on the farmhouse. Heavy timbers and cladding boards from the old barn would be reclaimed after its demolition and used for things like outdoor landscape structures, maybe a shade structure in that courtyard area, and perhaps even some decorative elements in the building itself, such as in the main public lobby. And then finally, landscape walls around that courtyard area where we have some grade transitions will be needed, and we think we could use some local limestone, Aramosa limestone, to also help tie in this design to its context even better. The second option is a bit more of a contemporary kind of industrial approach to the building cladding, which would be, I think, a more conventional way of approaching these buildings, especially a lot of our previous designs. It includes metal panels for the main cladding of the administration wing. The same wood we would want to reclaim in either of these options and use in similar ways from the old barn. And then here we would also be looking at, excuse me, cast in place concrete, architectural concrete for some of the outdoor landscape elements. And then finally, this last rendering, excuse me, shows that courtyard space. So just on the right-hand side, you can see a little bit of the old farmhouse with its red and buff brick. Some of the landscaped areas in the foreground here, including a new large kind of green amenity space with new trees. And just to the right, to the left side of the image would be that arboretum zone that would kind of seamlessly blend into it, as well as the community gardens. And then in front of the main building, just in the background, you can see some seating and a canopy. That would be where the main lunchroom for staff would spill out onto. So this would be not only a public amenity space that would be accessible to the public, it would be a staff space too for their lunches and for any township events that might be suitable for that area. There we go. Out of those two options, the design team and township staff do recommend material option one. It is more in keeping with the heritage cultural context of the site, especially with the existing farmhouse and other local historic buildings on nearby sites. And we have determined, Jay from Ball Construction has, with some preliminary analysis, determined that the capital costs for either material option are very similar. And with that, I will pass the baton back to Brandon. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. So yeah, value engineering. Value engineering is an exercise that is completed once a preliminary design is available. It's an opportunity to evaluate some of the previous assumptions that were made and to see if there are alternatives that will result in cost savings. We've been able to conduct value engineering on the civil components of the project, and we're able to identify the following cost savings. So we've been able to modify the site layout, which greatly reduced the amount of imported fill required. We were also reduced the paving areas to include only the high traffic areas. The remaining site will be left in a gravel surface. And we were able to reconfigure the site servicing to minimize the quantity of materials required. So with the value engineering changes noted, the estimated construction cost savings, the estimated construction costs have been reduced by approximately 5.25 million. And it's important to note that additional value engineering will occur as the other components of the project progress, like the mechanical, electrical, and structural systems, and we'll identify any further potential cost savings through that process. So just want to take a minute to give a quick overview of the key milestones in the project. So by December of this year, we plan to come back to council with an updated cost estimate, which will be included in the 2025 capital budget. In and around February of next year, we are hoping to have that guaranteed maximum price that Adam discussed earlier and bring that to council. And then in spring, subject to council's approval of the GMP, we hope to commence construction and projecting substantial completion and move in come end of 2026. And with that, I'll pass it back to Adam Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Brandon. Oops. So where we're at in the project now, we've advanced the detailed design enough to present something referred to as a Class D construction budget estimate. So a Class D budget is defined as a capital budget with an accuracy in the range of 20 to 30%. So the Class D budget estimate for construction is 34.75 million, which includes all costs to project manage, construct, furnish, and commission phase one. Note that this budget includes the value engineering cost savings that Brandon mentioned, so they've already been removed from this budget. So since the 2021 space needs assessment was completed, there have been, there have been some changes. Some time has gone by. We've seen really an unprecedented increase in the Canadian Building Construction Price Index fueled by inflation over the last few years, but the project has also undergone some scope changes. So since the space needs assessment was completed, we've added a second floor to the administration wing, which resulted in additional mechanical equipment such as elevators, which comes at a cost. We've also added staff from the Planning and Development Department, which has increased the floor space requirement. The training facility that was originally scoped to be constructed through phase 2 of the project, we've moved that up to be included in phase 1. Staff saw value in incorporating that into the administration building now so that we could fully complete the administration building in phase 1. So we've added a 50-person training facility. We've for temperature sensitive equipment such as our Vector trucks. We had been originally hoping to keep them elsewhere, but we identified an opportunity to have kind of an optimal space here at the Operations Center site to store them. And finally, we wanted to ensure we're complying with AODA requirements provincially, and then also Wellington County's accessibility standards, which meet and in some cases exceed the AODA requirements. Examples, differences in them include turnaround space for wheelchairs. The Wellington County accessibility standards have a higher requirement for that. So we've incorporated those requirements, and that has added to kind of the circulation space and the overall space needs for the site. Also, very important to note, when the 2021 estimate was prepared through the space needs assessment, we didn't have a site at that time. We hadn't selected a site for development. So there were some cost items that were not included in that original budget that are associated with the site development, and just some cost items that just at that stage in the project were very difficult to estimate that we've now incorporated into this budget. Those include area grading and stormwater management, pond construction, site servicing and paving, furniture and furnishings, communication security systems, building commissioning and project startups, project management fees during construction, and construction bonding and insurance. And the total of these excluded cost items adds up to about $10 million. So that was $10 million that was not accounted for in the 2021 estimate that has now been accounted for in the Class D budget. So I just want to summarize for you here just some of the changes to compare and contrast the 2021 estimate versus the Class D budget estimate that we have now. So I want to draw attention here to the total space requirement, and in particular, the space requirement for the office administration area. So, the increase in space, we went from about almost 13,000 square feet in 2021 to 26,000 square feet now. This is attributed to adding planning and development department, adding the training facility, and advancement of the detailed design. They really allowed us to hone in on the circulation areas and some of the shared amenity space that, again, to ensure we're complying with AOD requirements and the county's accessibility standards, we had to increase the space area for some of those common spaces and circulation areas. The capital cost estimate for phase one of the project was $10.95 million in 2021 versus the updated Class D budget of $34.75 million. But it's really important to benchmark these costs. So, when you look at a cost per square foot, how are we doing? Our Class D budget, we're at about $596 per square foot. We got some comparables from other municipalities, very similar facilities. The Barrie Operations Center, I believe this was a Class C budget estimate, came in at $739 per square foot, and the Brantford Works Yard, a Class D estimate, came in at $808 per square foot. So we feel as though we're in that range of comparable facilities, and even maybe a little bit lower, where we're not, we're trying to maintain the function of the facility, but making smart decisions in terms of those items that we have where we have discretion to do so. So there are some additional costs that are outside of the Class D estimate that we wanted to bring. We want to ensure they're included in the financial plan. So two major costs. One is cost to purchase equipment, $300,000. This is mainly equipment needed to build a licensed mechanic shop. So this is a service that the township currently does not have. We outsource all of our licensed mechanic needs for vehicles. So we're paying for that. So by bringing this function in-house, that will result in a long-term operating savings for the township. So we can look at this $300,000 capital cost as a bit of an investment in the equipment so that we can save on operating later. We also have to upgrade the Center Wellington hydro service to the site. So that involves going down Gartshore and upgrading the service. So the cost to bring that upgraded service to the site estimated about $150,000. So the financial plan that Adam McNabb will present to you later has factored those costs into the total capital cost. Also want to touch on operating costs. So to say with certainty right now what the operating cost of the new facility will be, but we can come up with some estimates here. So as council is aware, bringing staff to this new facility means that we will be vacating existing facilities. So there's a savings associated with vacating those existing facilities because we no longer need to pay to operate them. So we've estimated high level the operating savings cost of vacating those facilities where staff will be moving out of. And we estimate that total to be about $119,000 per year. So that's a 205 Queen Street, Fergus, the medical offices, Fergus East Works Garage, Pilkington Office Works Garage, and then Fergus Waterworks. Some staff will also be moving from there. And then the high level cost to operate the new operations center We got some information from the county to come up with this estimate, but we figure it's about $150,000 per year. So then if we look at an incremental cost, so subtract from that 150 the savings that we're achieving by vacating the other facilities, the incremental yearly operating cost is estimated to be about $31,000. Okay, so that's it for me, and I'm going to turn it over to Martin Pamlin, our climate change coordinator. Thank you.
Hello, thanks everybody. This is just a very quick update. I'm new to the right there. Okay, there we go. And so earlier exploration, when you're putting these, especially sustainable building design and looking at ongoing operational efficiencies, then the upfront costs are usually a lot more, but the ongoing savings, not to mention the amount of GHG emissions that you're reducing as well, which was really a key target. So this is what was looked at originally. So I'll just skip over these two quite quickly, because even though many of the aspects of the building fit both the Green and Inclusive Community Buildings Fund, the fact that most of it was administration then made it ineligible for funding under that stream. With the Zero Emissions Vehicle Infrastructure Program to fund charging and transition of the fleet to zero emissions. Again, the thresholds for this were a minimum of 20 level 2 chargers, which is beyond what we needed at this stage of development. So the next while is busy looking at other options, as you kind of also look at the new innovation and what options there are for heating and cooling the building, and all the other green and sustainable features that have already been listed. At the FCM conference this year, the Green Municipal Fund announced a bunch of new streams, which fit really nicely into what's happening here. So one was the Municipal and Community Buildings Fund, which funds studies, design, and even capital expenditures for low carbon design construction. Including energy efficiencies, use of sustainable materials, water conservation, and biodiversity, which are all elements that are already considered in the design of this building. The other was a Municipal Fleet Electrification Fund, which covers capital costs associated with achieving partial or complete transition to zero-emission vehicles. And that even includes plug-in hybrids as well. So currently we're examining what fleet we have and looking at transitional needs and what kind of EV-ready infrastructure needs to go into those buildings, which fits in really nicely with this as well. As far as which Brandon already alluded to, when looking at kind of how we manage and store and generate electricity, whether it's through solar array or even battery energy storage, which can benefit from peak demands and all those different things. Then we're in consultation with Aux Energy, which is with Hydro One, which looks at funding options and financing options, which can move some of those projects forward, which often can be barriers in doing a more ambitious and emission-saving project. So that's where we are right now. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Martin, and through you, Mayor Waters and members of council. In terms of the financial strategy associated with the construction of the Operations Center, I've prepared a quick synopsis based on the current cost estimate to give council some context in terms of what is being contemplated for the 2025 budget. At a high level, as has previously been the case, the growth components continue to be funded through development charges, specifically debt, which will be serviced through development charge proceeds. The non-growth components are to be serviced through a combination of reserve funds and proceeds from surplus land sales that will be considered upon commissioning of the new facility. So as can be seen in this slide, the growth-related debt is anticipated to be in the vicinity of $26 million, which will be serviced through annual debt payments of approximating $2 million. Reserve fund contributions will be provided from the Building Code Reserve Fund and the Economic Development Reserve Fund, with the remaining required funding being facilitated through land sale proceeds, which, when combined, are expected to be in the neighborhood of $8 million. And the construction of the proposed ops center will require approximately $7 million of these proceeds to ensure no tax levy increases are incurred. So in terms of a quick cash flow projection specifically related to development charges, this slide presents a snapshot of what is anticipated in terms of DC requirements against potential collections. The stacked bar chart represents the requirements when layering in the existing debt, the anticipated new debt requirements, DC credits, and the transfers to capital being contemplated in the current capital forecast. The horizontal lines represent proceeds using 2020, 2023, and the 5-year DC as proxies for potential collection levels. So when the stacked bar chart is over these horizontal lines, we are eclipsing proceeds, and where under, we're effectively banking proceeds for future use. So on balance, our DC reserve funds are not anticipated to dip below $10 million through the 2033 planning horizon. And also worth noting is that our current DC study is being contemplated. Our current DC study has contemplated contributions for a provision associated with the operations center, totaling approximately $12.2 million based on our historical estimates in terms of the cost of this facility. And a new study, which will be initiated in 2025, will consider the updated debt servicing costs if endorsed by council, which should support increased future DC collections. And with that, I'll now turn it back over to Colin Baker for some conclusion and wrap up.
Okay, great. Thanks, Adam. I know a lot of information's been presented today, but yeah, I just wanted to just highlight a few things for council just as we close. Excuse me. Just the operations center will be, there's a lot here, but just to summarize these bullet points, I think into three items. It will be the model of environmental sustainability. The operations center will contribute to our community's well-being and quality of life, and serve the community now and well into the future. We're talking about building a facility that accommodates growth to 2041, but in reality, this facility is going to be around for a much longer time. So really, it sets the township up well as the community grows. So just there we go. So council touch points. So I've heard a bit of this already, but so we'll be back next month. We'll have some updates on the cost estimate, on the budget, or sorry, the grant investigations that Martin's completing as well, and then kind of January, February, winter 2025, present the final design and recommendation for approval of the guaranteed maximum price contract. Just a couple notes too. We've updated the project webpage, connectcw.ca, and so all the supporting reports, studies, it's all there, everything. All the documents are there. We've even added a FAQs document too. So just a good resource if you're looking just for some, the common questions, like the top 10 or 15 questions that we're hearing. We've tried to list those out and provide responses to all those. So that document's available on the connectcw.ca webpage. And with that concludes our presentation, and thanks for the time, and we'd be happy to answer any questions council may have at this time.
Okay, thank you, Colin, and your team for presenting that. A lot of information to digest, and obviously this has been a process that's been going on for a long time. Actually, started in the previous council, and obviously it's moved along into to where we've received it now, and to contemplate a lot. And there's been a lot of changes along the way. So part of this process is to bring up the folks not only in council, but the community up to date of where things are at. So it relates to this because it's a major expense. So, and then we'll get some clarity. So I'm going to pass it now over to council for comments and questions, and I'll start with Councillor McDonald.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Waters, I just have one question. The GICB fund and the ZEB fund, the greener energy funds, when do you expect to apply for those? And if you don't know, that's okay. We can discuss it for December.
Yeah. So yeah, Martin will just clarify the two. So it's the GICB.
Yeah.
And
That was the initial study with those, and the project wasn't going to fit into either of those categories
At all?
So no.
Okay.
So it was the Green Municipal Fund, which is actually the ones that we're looking at are actually open year round. And some of them are actually allow us to look deeper into what kind of systems and GH reducing measures we can put into it, so we can actually move forward with some of those fairly soon once we decide.
Okay. And we'll see those in December? Yeah.
We'll have more information on them in December.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Walton.
Thank you, Mayor Waters, and through you, and thank you to Colin and your team for all the hard work on this project. I am curious if there's more details available for the material option 1 versus 2. So just, it says in the report in the slide deck that the costs are similar, but is that similar, like 5,000 off, or what's the actual cost? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Councillor Wilton, through the mayor. So the recommended option, building material option 1, which is more the red brick, kind of natural stone option, high level cost estimates about $75 per square foot for cladding in that option, versus material option 2, which is the more conventional kind of steel look, $95 per square foot with that option. So option 2 is more, with the caveat that with option 1 there will be some additional expense to reinforce the foundation to hold the brick. So Ball has and the team have kind of told us that in the end the cost will likely be very similar, and that's why we've used the language that we have in saying that both options, the capital cost for both seems to be similar.
Just a quick follow-up on that, Adam. Is the longevity, like the durability of the two materials, taken into consideration for that?
Yeah, no, great question, Councillor Wilton. Thank you for that. Through the mayor, I think I'll call up our experts perhaps to speak to that. So I'm not sure if Jay or Jeff would be able to just comment on the longevity of the materials. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. In terms of longevity, I think in my opinion, that's all I can really base it on. The brick would be a more durable end product. The nice thing with the brick too, it's a regional material. Brick is manufactured here. We have a lot of masons in this area. Some of the largest masonry companies in North America are actually within this region. So it is a very good regional product. So that's what I would say overall between the two.
It's follow-up. What about time for construction? So the actual staff time or like labor time to put in the brick versus the metal?
So the backup wall system, we'll say as the overall wall system, the backup, what would either support the brick or the aluminum composite material would be the same wall system. So there'd be no difference in time for that. The brick would typically take a little bit longer, but the thing is, because it's on the exterior of the building, we can still be doing a lot on the inside. So the overall project schedule, I don't see a negative impact from one over the other.
Councillor Evoy.
You, sir, actually follow up from my colleague. If it's actually less expensive, why aren't we using brick on both buildings? And if it lasts longer, I'm confused.
So like we said, the overall cost per square foot for that overall wall assembly for the brick is slightly lower. But there's other factors we have to take into consideration. The structural steel to support the brick will be slightly more expensive. The details are slightly different. So it impacts other building elements. So that's why it kind of balances the overall cost.
But you did say it would last longer, so would it not make sense to do that on both buildings?
And for sure, and all I'm talking about is just the actual construction cost.
Right.
But that's why I was saying that I feel that brick is a really good durable way to go.
Right. I'll look to our other staffer on that. My actual question, with your permission, was with regards to, and this probably is a staff question, with regards to that 596 per square foot number that you gave us. You compared it to Barrie and Brantford or Brampton. I apologize, I forget which one. I mean, no disrespect. How does it qualify with comps in the area closer to home?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Councillor Evoy, and through the mayor. So, and just sorry, coming back to your first point, am I correct in understanding? I think you were getting at why wouldn't we construct the entire building out of brick? So yeah, so including the garage area. I think the reason for that is the wall assembly of the garage area is quite different from the administration office, as you can imagine, like a garage, right? It's a bit of a different construction technique. I think we're even looking at pre-engineered structures for the garage, and those are typically, they come fabricated a certain way, and it's typically with that steel cladding. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, and then on your question about comparable projects in the area, we were trying to assemble some examples that we were allowed to share, and some municipalities I think are a little guard those numbers a little bit, but I will turn it over to Jeff. Perhaps I don't know, Jeff, you have some examples of maybe like the Robert C. Austin facility in the town of Halton Hills. Okay.
Yeah, well, I don't have a ton of information on hand for comparable costs per square foot for other municipalities. I will note that the two examples that I think Adam brought up earlier, the Brantford Operations Center, which is currently being planned at the very early stages, and the Barrie Operations Center, both projects that our firm is involved in. So those are both, as you heard, higher costs per square foot. They're both somewhat larger facilities, and in some cases have some more specialized functions happening in them. So that may account for some of the higher costs there. In my experience, anything that we're looking at in the last couple of years would be in the $500 to $600 plus range per square foot. So what we're seeing for this is very much in keeping with prices that are coming out recently. It's been, I'd say, the last 5 years, and in particular the last 2 or 3 years since the pandemic started to wane, have been marked by pretty extraordinary escalation in construction costs, particularly in these kinds of facilities, steel and concrete structures. So it's not at all surprising to our consultant team that the costs have gone up in this way. I was also going to add something to the effect of what Adam just said about the construction of the rear section of the building. So I won't go into that, but I can give a little more detail on that if anyone wanted. Thank you.
Councillor Adams.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. In keeping with the material selection in our first part of the resolution regarding material option 1 or 2, I think in addition to the steel and brick, it was also deciding between material for the landscape walls. So whether it's the limestone or with the brick, or the cast in place concrete with the steel. And so I'm just also curious on the price of those materials, and yeah, which one's an option there?
Yeah, I'd say so we talked about the brick versus metal cladding, I guess, and sort of in the $75 to $95 a square foot range. I'd say the stone or architectural concrete options, in my experience, I wouldn't be able to put it into numbers that would be separated out from an overall estimate. But in my experience, both of those options are going to be, again, pretty similar. I don't think there's any reason to think one is going to break the bank compared to the other at this point, because with the limestone, what we're imagining is that it would actually be like a limestone cladding on a concrete or or a block even retaining wall. And so the cost of the stone material there isn't huge, whereas the architectural concrete finish is a pretty specialized kind of thing to do to make it look good as a final finish in a structural retaining wall or landscape wall pour. So it isn't really a matter of one is just concrete and then one is concrete with stone on it. It's sort of very specialized concrete versus more conventional standard concrete with a stone cladding on it. So I would say they are likely to be very similar. I don't know if Jay, you have any thoughts on that from your knowledge?
I'm going to contradict a little bit. The limestone will be more expensive. There's no question. You're still going to have to construct a cast in place concrete retaining wall, foundation and everything for that. The limestone would be a cladding on top of that. So we could be looking at, say, a 15% increase in the cost from the conventional concrete to more the architectural. But the limestone would be quite a bit more in terms of, because you're adding a whole nother element. It's a cladding to it. And to be honest, we're nowhere near at a point in terms of the landscape design to really understand what those cost comparators would be compared one to the other. We're still working through kind of that landscape concept and how we make those that outdoor space work with the existing grading and the interconnection with the existing farmhouse.
Thank you, through you, because I do know we're looking to approve the staff option of material option 1, which specifically says that the limestone landscaping walls would be used throughout. So I'm wondering if that's maybe just something that maybe a decision could come later. And just also about the landscaping walls, I'm assuming these actually like have a purpose. They're not just attractive.
Yeah, right now, like we were saying, we're trying to figure out the grade, the actual elevation change from the finished floor of the new facility and kind of the finished floor of the existing farmhouse. The new facility is going to be lower. So we have to try to manage that change in grade from one to the other. So the retaining wall would act as basically exactly that, retaining the soils and allowing us to make that transition between the two elevations. But like I said, the extent of that is unclear yet until we go a little bit further in the design.
Councillor Walton.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. Just changing topics a little bit and bringing it a little higher level. This question is probably for, I'm not sure, Adam maybe, or maybe even Dan. But I'm curious if there could be a rundown on which staffing units are planning to relocate to the new operations facility for phase 1. And then also like, now that it's changed, now we've kind of added that 50-person training facility, is there an opportunity to look at more staffing opportunities and maybe even council chambers or some type of other use that could happen in that facility? Just if we're rethinking things, why don't we just really rethink things and make sure we're not missing any opportunity to optimize the space as much as possible. So just curious for that rundown. And then if there's other opportunities, because you wouldn't want a 50-person training facility sitting empty like 70% of the time or something like that. So thank you.
Through Mayor Waters, and thank you for the question, Councillor Wilton. I might over Shid's here to talk about maybe perhaps the training. So can I get ready for that? But yeah, certainly the group's moving to the operations center. So information technologies or IT team currently at 205 Queen Street. So that's a facility looking to divest of. Our water services staff, so operations and supervisors, they will be moving from the site on Queen Street as well. To the new operations center. We have the well at that location, so we'll be keeping that site. We have the operators work out of a trailer that we've been renting for a long time, and so we will no longer have that expense. So we'll be getting rid of the trailer. Public Works. So from the Fergus shop will be from Glengarry, 600 Glengarry, and then also the building department from this area here, planning as well, And the thinking was community services too. So community services department is kind of pressed for space at the Sportsplex, making use of the house and then also part of the Sportsplex building. So there'll be some extra space for them to relocate into as they figure out the master plan for the Sportsplex property. So that, and just in terms of facilities, like I did mention clerks. So clerks isn't physically moving over to the operations center. They're going to stay here. But the record storage, there is a portion of the main level that has been allocated for as that secure record storage. So that's at the operations center. And in terms of the council chambers and the training facility, Dan's going to address that.
Through Mayor Waters, we're looking at a number of options with the training facility. It would be for all township staff, not just the ones transitioning to the operations center. We're looking to make it where you can make it into multiple rooms, or you can open it up into one large room for 50 people. Act as a meeting room, multiple meeting rooms for various meetings. We have a very successful learning and development program through human resources, where we're constantly looking for space for more than 20 people. And right now, most of our township space maxes out.
A lunchroom kind of thing with refrigerators.
Just caulkators.
Microwaves, that sort of thing. Yeah, that's all we're
in the house. Sorry, just to complete on
the
that.
house is it's very residential, and I don't think we have plans to do any improvements to the kitchen at this stage. But I do see the house as kind of a future opportunity.
Definitely
been here long enough to recognize opportunities kind of come up that you're not really expecting, and by having that house there, it kind of invites maybe a future opportunity that we can plan for something.
Thanks.
Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters, on a different note, it was mentioned that it would be dark sky compliant, which I think is very admirable, and I do like that. But I also want to ensure the safety of everyone who visits this center. We're in a time of year where it's dark at 5 o'clock, or we're getting earlier and earlier as we go into the winter, and so it still is important to have light to go to the cars, to, if someone's working in the back lot, so I'm just safety. So I don't know how you're going to meet both, but I commend you for putting that in there.
Yeah, no. Thanks for the comment, the question. It's definitely dark sky compliant. Basically, just eliminates the light pollution kind of going straight up to where it's not needed. All right. So and focus it on the areas where it is needed at ground level. So we'll actually do a photometric design, which is a little study that just looks at where the fixtures need to go and what the light coverage of each fixture, whether it's mounted on the building or if it's a light standard in the parking lot or in the yard, so that we have adequate coverage within the facility and we're not spilling light to places where it shouldn't go.
Councillor Adams.
Thank you. Through you. Similar in terms of like having space for community rentals or stuff. I think in the presentation there was a reference to like a one window for residents. Now we have a window here, which is, where most of our residents are coming in with their inquiries and stuff as well. So are we looking that this would not be a window, that's would be an alternative? And so you could go to one spot to do all services? I just know you wouldn't. We think we need to have a clear strategy there, right? Because people get really frustrated if they show up here and they're like, oh no, you got to go over here for that, but here for this.
Yeah, no, great comment, and through the mayor. And I don't know if Dan, you want to add to this? I think the vision is to make it as convenient as possible for residents and businesses to do business with the township, right? Whether it's pay their taxes or get a permit of some sort, and really make that as convenient as possible. So, yeah, I think the vision is always to have, customer service counter here. But, how many functions can we have the customer service counter at the operations center do? Does it just need to serve, the groups that are there, or can it, double as services here as well? So I don't know, Dan, if you had anything else to add to that.
Yeah, thanks, Colin, and through Mayor Waters. We definitely have to have a good look at customer service and maybe bring forward a strategy before the operations center actually opens. But right now we have corporate administrations at one spot in this building. We have planning and development downstairs, and we have infrastructure services at the Pilkington office. So it'd be a change in mindset and actually go down to 2 locations where corporate administration would stay here, but then you have infrastructure services, planning and development all at one spot at the operations center. So we'll maintain 2 customer service primary functions, but the key question is how much can we duplicate in both so that you can go to one location for as much as possible? And I think that's where we need to have a holistic look at customer service before we actually open in 2 years.
Councillor Jefferson.
Thank you, Mayor Waters, and through you. My question, I guess, it's just kind of in dealing with our current price per square foot is a Class D estimate. And then it's saying that in December that we're going to be coming back with budget upgrades or updates, and it's looking to be more of a Class C estimate. Now, it's also saying that Class D is like 20 to 30%. Up or down. What is the basis of the Class C for its percentage, like for how close it's going to be for the detailed design and the final price?
Oh, thanks for your question. I think I'm going to get Adam Gilmore to respond to that. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Come on. All right.
Get me up here. So there's really 4 levels of construction budgets, D being the lowest cost certainty, A being the highest. The D is typically a cost per square foot. It's usually our benchmark to figure out based on kind of initial design. So we know roughly the square footage of the building. We know kind of the intended use. We have some idea in terms of what the building is going to look like as we develop the design. So right now we've gone to floor plans. We're working on elevations now. We're starting to understand what the actual systems will be within the building. So then we can work to compile a little bit more cost certainty in terms budget. And we'd probably, the next level, you'd probably be looking at more of a 15% plus or minus with the Class C. It won't be, we don't follow like a hard Class C, Class D kind of schedule with these type of budgets because of the type of project this is. Because it's a progressive design build, we're a bit more integrated with the design team, and we can design and budget on the fly. So we have a little bit better cost certainty overall in a project. So the next round, I would say we're probably at a 15% plus or minus. Yeah, if that answers the question, I don't know.
Councillor Walton.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. I think this question's for Adam, so don't run away too much. Just curious if there's, in the process of all the studies that were done, was a traffic study done? I'm thinking primarily of Gordon Street and Gartshore for the additional kind of heavier traffic that might be coming in and out of the center.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Wilton, through the mayor. So yes, there was a traffic study done. The limits of the traffic study included Gartshore, Gordon, and actually went out to Highway 6 and some of the turning movements from Highway 6 onto Gordon Street and Gordon Street onto Highway 6, or St. David Street North, sorry. And yeah, so the traffic study concluded that there were no immediate improvements needed. So we could move into the facility and the traffic networks are adequate. In the future, about 20 years down the road, there might be a need for some additional turning infrastructure at specifically the Gordon and St. David Street North intersection, but that was not triggered until later. And we construct the second phase of the facility.
Councillor Addams.
Thank you, through you. I have a couple questions regarding some of the more green initiatives. One was whether like any kind of geothermal ground source of heating was ever looked at. And then the other one is regarding the electric car chargers. I've noticed that it's like level 2 with a couple, was it 3 level 3s? Then the one grant would have been eligible, but it said due to the constraints on the location or something. So are level 3 just not possible there? Because I'm just wondering if there is a grant available for the level 3 and their level 3 are 8 times faster than the level 2 chargers. Why aren't we looking at that a little bit more closely as opposed to having like a quick charge in 30 minutes versus somebody having to be parked in that spot all day to kind of get their charge?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Addams, for the question. So through the mayor, so I'll answer the last part of your question first. So the level 3 charging stations are very expensive, and I'll let perhaps Brandon come up in a minute here to speak to the cost of them, but they're quite a bit more expensive. So it wasn't so much location. Well, the location is constrained in that we would need a much larger hydro service to the location also. So we'd have to factor that into the hydro servicing, the transformer requirements and all of that. So when we looked at it, we kind of added up the capital cost for level 3 systems. The capital cost of those wasn't, the grant wasn't offsetting kind of the benefit of having those, the capital cost of including those types of chargers. So it was a bit of a financial exercise we went through to determine whether it was worth it or not. Now your question about, sorry, the first part of your question is lost on me here. It was the geothermal, of course. Thank you. The geothermal system. Yeah. So again, we looked at the option of including geothermal and having the site heated and cooled by geothermal exclusively. And it was, again, it was quite a high capital cost, about $4 million for a geothermal system to satisfy the requirements at the site. And then more importantly, we were a bit concerned just the proximity to well F6. And with these types of geothermal systems, you're drilling into the ground, and sometimes you've got media in the geothermal that if it leaks, it could cause environmental concerns. We wouldn't want to compromise our water quality at our well in any way. So we just determined that the risk of putting in a geothermal system compromising our water quality would not be favorable in this circumstance.
Thank you. That answered my questions, definitely about the geothermal. Going back to the car chargers, is there, again, this is like long-term. I wouldn't want to, having these level 2 chargers set up and then ripping up the pavement to replace them, to upgrade them a couple years later. Is there an option to whatever is within the ground do now, and whether the extra cost has to come later, and maybe then tap into like a grant to complete level 3 charging?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Adams. So through the mayor, I think absolutely we can do that. So ducting is not expensive, right? And it would just be ensuring that we would have the ducting in place to upgrade those chargers at a later time. I think that's certainly something the design team, we can take that away, ensure that we have the infrastructure is there in the ground and it's compatible with upgrading in the future and capitalizing on future grant opportunities.
Councillor Craddock.
Thank you. Through you, I started with a couple questions. Now I have lots. Apologies. A real easy one, and this is an embarrassing one for me to ask, but can you just explain guaranteed maximum price in layman's terms?
Yeah, absolutely. No, really great question, Councillor Craddock. And through the mayor, so so what's going to happen is the design team, once we've advanced the design long enough that we can actually, we have work packages. So these are structural steel, drywall, roofing. What they're going to do is through the township, we're going to tender those work packages, and that will be a competitive bid process. So then we'll have subcontractors bidding on those work packages, and then all the costs will come in, and we'll essentially know what it's going to cost for each of those work packages. So we'll add that all up, and that's what will form the guaranteed maximum price. We've kind of have these subs kind of locked into a price for the project, but the project is still not approved at that point. So we have the guaranteed maximum price that we assemble, and that's the price that the project won't exceed. We'll then come to council with that guaranteed maximum price for consideration and award, and that'll be in the February timeframe. That's what we're working towards right now. Once council approves the guaranteed maximum price, then the project proceeds to construction, but not before then.
Another quick definition: the type of trucks that we decided to purchase. What were they? Vector trucks. The 2 vectors. What's a vector truck?
Yeah.
Or Vector.
Vector, yeah, sorry. No, thanks for the question again. So yeah, Vector trucks, we already own those. So these are like, these are trucks that they use water under pressure. They kind of spray it into the ground and then they're sucking up the loose material. So it's a way we use them to excavate material. We also use them when we have like large rain events and we need them to supplement, like we need them to suck up sewage in some locations or to clean up certain locations. We use them for those reasons. So we have 2 Vector trucks in our fleet. They can't be outside in the winter because they contain water. If the water freezes while they're through the winter, that damages the equipment.
Okay, thank you for those definitions. The mechanic and the equipment to go along with it, would that be able to service the municipality's fleet?
Yeah. John Gaddy. I'm going to get John Gaddy to come up, our manager of public works, and speak to that. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So in the staffing strategy, in the budget package, you'll see we're planning for 2 mechanics or 2 fleet maintenance staff, and in the year that we open the facility. 2 mechanics is by no means enough to do our complete fleet, but it's a good start. And so we'll say it'll be kind of a hybrid system between contracting out and doing some of the work in-house, but it'll be a great start to start bringing some of that work in-house. And it's far more cost effective if we have the facility, especially to be paying hourly rates to a mechanic as a set of shop rates.
Councillor Adams.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I actually had a question regarding the Vector trucks as well. So because that added scope by adding in those 2 additional garage bays, and I'm just kind of curious where we had where they were previously and why they weren't accounted for initially, and just kind of generally when we look at the added scope, I was wondering if there was at all a little bit of a breakdown from the 2 garage bays to the training facility to the 2nd floor, if we had a bit of a breakdown there, like the amounts that got added there. Was it in there?
Through Mayor Waters. So so we have 2 Vectors. Over the winter, they're stored indoors. One gets stored at the Pilkington shop, which the plan is to sell. So it definitely needs a location. The other is in the Allura shop. We typically store it there. So the idea is it's getting very crammed with vehicles and equipment in that location too. So to give them a bit of relief, bringing the other Vector over to the operations center is the plan for that.
Councillor Craddock, did you have any other questions you wanted to? Okay. Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters. Just back to the mechanic stuff. Sorry. Sorry there. Most mechanics come with their own tools. And normally the employer would purchase those tools as they need them on an ongoing basis if they became a permanent full-time employee, correct? I think I'm correct. So have we forecasted that piece in all of this? I mean, it's fine and dandy to say we're going to build this and we're going to hire them, but there is high extra costs with doing this. And so you did say that you checked financially instead of contracting out. We still will be saving money if you look at the long term of hiring. Okay.
Yep, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yep, by all, there's certainly costs to run a shop. To industry standards, the mechanics come with their personal set of tools, but then there's also shop tools that are typically just larger in nature or expense, and so that is incorporated in the equipment budget that was presented earlier. But yes, there's certainly ongoing tool costs that we wouldn't have right now that will be for replacing tools and adding to those toolboxes and stuff like that. So yeah.
Councillor Jefferson.
Thank you, Mayor Waters, through you. I think it's for Adam. It was just bouncing off of what Councillor Wilton was asking about for the traffic. There you are, the traffic study. I just wanted a bit of clarification for Gartshore. I know that there's some issues up there because there's that's like one of the walkable routes for the kids going to the high school, and part of that road doesn't have sidewalks. And then you said that there was looking at the turning radius for Gordon onto 6, but what about Gordon onto Gartshore? And then it also was pointed out that it had been paved recently up there. So I'm figuring that's for traffic. But that area is going to become really busy, like with the business park as it builds out, and then the industrial that we have up there now. And then we're coming in with anticipation of 100 eventually staff up there with personal cars, our own fleet, our own plows, our own trucks. And you're saying 20 years out is when we would be looking at actually, I guess, fixing the road or creating the road to have that much traffic on it. I'm just confused and want clarification, just because I'm thinking it's something that would need to be done prior to 20 years out, just for the condition of the road that it's in now.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Jefferson. So through the mayor, so what 10 to 20 years, I guess, is the time frame. Like it's triggered by the next phase of expansion at the site. So by the phase 2 construction, which we think will be needed in about 10 years. So that's why I say 20. Sure, I should be saying 10 to 20 years. Yeah, that was all factored into the transportation study. We loaded into the study the new Dixon Drive extension, so the traffic's going to be relying on using the Dixon Drive extension to first line. To kind of move out off the site and move towards the east. That's the new business park, Fergus Business Park extension of Dixon Drive. So I mean, it was all loaded into the traffic study. In terms of sidewalks and active transportation, obviously that wasn't part of the scope of the traffic study. That's something we're looking at, I think, through our active transportation master plan, which is underway, looking at gaps in the sidewalk network and opportunities to connect active transportation from that perspective. So there could be some recommendations through that study for improvements along Gartshore, but I would say that was kind of outside the scope of the traffic study we were looking at, which was just the vehicle movements to and from the site.
Thank you. Through you, just clarification, you're wanting the trucks and that to come off Dixon Drive and then to the first line to utilize to go out to 19, or because it's Highway 6 is like our main road that would be going up and down. So I'm just wondering, because they'd be coming in west on Dixon to Gartshore to Gordon to 6. So just the increase of truck traffic from our business park alone would be quite a bit from what it is now.
Yeah, no, and again, thanks for the comments, the questions. So through the mayor, the traffic study, like they use a model and they take into consideration that model, the increase in employment and traffic from employment in the Dixon Drive, in the Fergus Business Park. So I think the assumption was that was kind of loaded up and built out, and what's the traffic volume coming from that area, and then they're kind of moving traffic through this computer network, right, and seeing where the pinch points are. And again, based on that assessment that was done, it was determined that the current network was adequate until we construct phase 2, and there might be some intersection improvements at Gordon and St. David Street.
Councillor Wilton.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. And I'm going to go for the other Adam, so give a break there. Just curious, in the financing plan and strategy, so there is currently think it's 25 unaccounted for, 25 million unaccounted for payments, I guess. And you're relying quite a bit on the development charges to cover that in the future years over the next 8 to 10 years, correct?
The debt that's being contemplated for this facility would be a 20-year issue. And we would be looking at, we've got current rates that have been built into our debt model that would suggest that the current borrowing rate would be in the vicinity of 4.4%. So with that, on the 25 million over the 20 years at that perceived rate, appreciating that we're still in a market where we're seeing a decline on interest rates, hopefully we can get a little bit more advantageous down the road. But yeah, the borrowing costs on that debt of the $25 million, or just in excess of, would be in the vicinity of $2 million a year.
And is there any risk, there's been noise over the past couple of years, as Brett would attest to, from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing around those development charges and what municipalities can actually recoup for costs and continue to receive development charges. So is there a plan B for financing that debt in case there is any potential change in development charges, or is this what we're relying on? And what other kind of contingency plans should we have in place? And my second part to that question is, are we hamstringing future councils to do anything kind of major in terms of parks and recreation facilities on our new parkland, for example? So how do you kind of continue to plan for other services for the community? So thank you.
No, thank you for the questions. And through you, Mayor Waters. The way this model has been built out and has always been contemplated is that it will be serviced through development charges. I haven't heard any rumblings that development charges will be kind of ended full stop. So with that, we do have a DC study that's currently in place that contemplated a $2.2 million cost for this particular center. We will be initiating a new development charge study in 2025 to be completed in early 2026. And with any new development charges study, it comes with a 10-year horizon. So with all of the master planning or longer term planning that we're doing now, those are all being done to inform the next DC study. So with that, we'll be introducing things from all service provisions across the organization. So I wouldn't suggest that by us going down this path with the operations center, we would be doing a disservice to any of the other service delivery areas.
Okay, Council, any other questions, comments? So I know one of the discussion out and even prior to this council was the cost of this facility in terms of how it'll affect the community that way. But I think we need to, as best we can, to explain that to the public on a level that they can understand that really the reason we're approaching it is because where we're at in terms of growth. Also, where we are at in terms of our other facilities being very antiquated and being able to utilize those in a more and also meet our obligations in terms of them operating at a high level. But I think the public needs to understand sort of the cost of this facility in terms of where it's going to affect the bottom line in terms of the tax rate. And I think it would be to have that explanation done on sort of a way that the public can understand that, I think is really important, because the grumbling sometimes out there is that we're spending this money and at the bottom line, it's affecting what I pay on a yearly basis on a tax basis. But I think on something like this, where I see it as a real opportunity, given sort of what the facility is and how it will facilitate good works in the future, I think there needs to be sort of a real good explanation of that. So anyone want to take a leap there that way and explain that? So I think there's a good understanding of how this will affect and really at the bottom line in terms of the yearly tax rate. So.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Walls. I can certainly take a stab at it, and I would refer to my colleagues or defer to my colleagues if there's any other additional commentary required. But ultimately, in terms of the tax rate implications for the construction of this facility, is that there will be none. That what is being contemplated is a debt issue that will be serviced through development charges, which are borne through building permits for kind of our growth as it comes to commercial, industrial, and residential properties within the community. So with that, those would be serviced for the growth component of the construction build that's being contemplated here today. Anything ancillary to that or outside of the growth where we're having kind of build for replacement needs, those are being facilitated through disposing of our existing properties, which will no longer be required with this new facility being built out. And beyond that, outside of those proceeds, we will also have what we've already captured by way of reserve funds to facilitate the other non-growth components for the other areas of the building that will be occupied by the other service provisions, being the building department and economic development. So ultimately, from the construction standpoint, there will be no implications or impact on the tax rate going forward.
The other question, and again, I'd like to sort of get this out to the public for their consumption as well, is that the question I think we've heard in the past that our existing facilities are at a point where we can still utilize them. Why are we doing this? Doesn't make any sense that we be doing this other building. Maybe someone can speak to where we are and really explaining that to the public, and also the fact that sort of taking all these number of facilities and really from a strategic point of view, with sort of what's left over after sort of doing all those changes, what's left over in terms of those buildings left. So we're talking going from all these buildings down to 3, and sort of again the rationale for that. So anyone want to speak to that?
There we go. Thank you for the question. So, we didn't tour our facilities today. We did that earlier in the term, but certainly they're quite antiquated and built for what I would say another era. Like 60, 70, sometimes 100 years ago. So it really is facilities that are at their end of life cycle. And, the ones that we are looking to divest, like we have, I know sometimes we say, well, you haven't looked after your facilities, you haven't maintained them. We have looked after them. They are just old and tired facilities. So the Fergus shop on Glengarry, the Pilkington office will be sold. We're going to retain the Elora shop on Park Road. We're going to retain West Garry and have that east-west presence. But the 205 Queen Street has been great. It has definitely helped relieve some of the pressures in terms of our space. But we do see that as an opportunity to sell as well. There's some redevelopment happening with the likely in the future with the hospital in that kind of quadrant area. So there's potential for, I think, that site, the 205 Queen Street site that we have as well. So it's really like we're from an operations perspective, and I see this now even more that we're in these 5, 6 different facilities. It's very disjointed. To bring everybody together, the thinking is that we'll have synergies, we'll be together even as cross-departmental efficiencies between community services, infrastructure services, also planning and development. Our departments, the 3 of us, they talk every day, and to have everyone under a same roof, for the majority of staff under the same roof, there'll be definitely some operational efficiencies from that respect. So. I think we're looking at generating approximately $8 million in terms of proceeds from the sale of township property, and that is really largely to fund that non-growth portion related to the operations center. So, hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. Any more comments or questions, Councillor McDonald?
Through you, Mayor Waters, maybe it's just a comment. When we first were elected to council, we did a tour of all the facilities, and I do remember seeing some Band-Aid options that were over 12 years old. Been on council for 2 years, so 12 years now, where staff are having their lunches and things. So I know you're bursting at the seams, so that makes it easier for all of this. So that always comes to a forefront for me in this whole package, is that we want a nice, safe place for our staff to work and council meetings or whatever we do going forward. So thank you.
Councillor Craddock.
Great definition. For you, Pat, not long ago, we were looking for additional office space at the Sportsplex. Would you still be needing that if you were to move to the Operations Center?
Thanks. That's a great question. So the area that would consider moving over to the Operations Center would be the Parks Department, and our administrative services for Parks and Recreation would remain at the Sportsplex counter. And so the addition we were looking to add some offices were for expansion of the staff that work at the Sportsplex. So there would be one staff that could potentially move over with the Operations Center that we were looking for staff space for, but not all of them. But it is a big change to move all of the parks who are bursting out of that house and barn, and it will be a great opportunity for them to have the space they need, especially as their teams grow in the summer. For all of the students need somewhere to have their lunch and all of that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's great. And then definition for you, Adam, if you don't mind just explaining what you mean when there's like zero effect on the tax dollar.
Yeah, no.
One more time.
Yeah, sure. No, happy to do it.
No. Zero.
Yeah, no, the construction costs being contemplated for the construction of this operations facility will be funded through a combination of development charges, land sale divestitures, and existing reserve fund dollars. So nothing being contemplated through the 2025 or future budgets in terms of the construction costs being facilitated through levy increases.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, I'm going to read the recommendation. Again, this is part of a continual process, so we're not making any big decisions today. It's just we're moving this needle along. So the recommendation that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington endorses material option 1 for the exterior design concept of the Operations Centre building as outlined in report number IS 2024-29, and that Council directs staff to further investigate grant opportunities to report back to Council in December 2024 with an update, and that Council directs staff to report back to Council with a Class C budget estimate in the December 2024 as part of the 2025 budget deliberations. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Wilton. Do I have a seconder on that? Councillor Evoy. Any further comments or questions? Councillor Adams.
Thank you. I'd just like to propose what I would hope would be a minor amendment on the first resolution there, where we strike out the detail about the limestone. I think right now it sounds like we needed to make a decision on the material for the building, and I think that something like adding limestone could come later once we have that guaranteed price.
So if I could make a suggestion, it would be helpful if we could get the brick versus the steel cladding. Yeah, okay, and then we can certainly figure out the limestone versus the kind of polished concrete finish. We can certainly figure that out later.
Yeah, so just to clarify, it was just an amendment on material option 1, just to strike out the limestone landscape, not anything else. Yeah.
That's not.
It's not in there. No.
It's in the description of the material option 1 in the report.
Would that be picked up?
No, it must be part of this. She's asked for it. So if you want to just read that and see if that captures.
So I'll read this out and see if we're all comfortable with this. that the Council of Township of Central Wellington endorse material option 1 with exception of the inclusion of limestone landscape for the exterior design concept of Operations Center building as outlined in report IS 2024-29. Nothing else changes.
The rest is
it's the same. So you
did that capture it?
Yep. So who was first on that? Was it? Yeah.
moving,
You're okay with that? Change that? And who was second? Okay. Okay, so
Considered a friendly
yep,
amendment.
friendly amendment. And then I'll continue, and that council directs staff to further investigate grant opportunities and report back to council in December 2024 with an update. And that council directs staff to report back to council with the Class C budget estimate in December 2024 as part of a 2025 budget deliberation. So we had a first and we had a second. Any other further Sorry.
I think Bronwyn did the first.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. I was just pointing over in this general direction. Yeah. So that you're good with that? So, yep. Okay. First, and then Councillor Evoy was second. Okay. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none. All those in favor? That's so moved. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for your input there. I know there's been a lot of effort to this point on this, and thank you for bringing that report to council today. So we're going to move down to item. We were going to take a 7-minute break right now, so we'll be back shortly. Thank you. Okay, folks, welcome back. We're going to go down to item 7.2, 2025 draft budget debt requirements and capacity, and we have a report from Adam McNabb.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Waters, and through you. Just a couple of reports pertaining to informational items, and then a couple of policy items, and then we'll transition into kind of the meat and potatoes of the remainder of the meeting from a 10-year capital forecast standpoint. So the item 7.2, draft budget debt requirements and capacity. With this report, staff are seeking council approval to include debt requirements, capacity, detailed as outlined in this report in the 2025 draft budget. And as can be seen in the detailed calculations, staff have contemplated and included the anticipated debt requirements and servicing costs through the 2035 timeframe. And with these calculations, the township remains compliant both with the legislative annual repayment limits, which is to be below 25% of own source revenues, less debt servicing costs. In addition to that, we're also compliant with our self-imposed ceiling of 15% of our own source revenues, as was endorsed through our asset management plan. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions that council may have with regards to the forecast before you.
Thanks, Adam. And through Mayor Waters, just to add to that before we open it up to questions, you'll notice in the one of the graphs in report 7.2, we look at the debt capacity. And as Adam mentioned, we're well within provincial debt capacity requirements of staying under 25% of revenues and still well within our internal imposed limit of 15% of revenues. This includes the operations center debt that was discussed in the previous report. So I think Councillor Wilton was bringing that up as part of her questions in the operations center report, where we still have room for additional debt if that becomes a requirement through, for example, the Parks and Rec plan implementation. So we still have room really between the blue line and the green line, which is our anticipated debt, and our self-imposed ceiling of 15% if we need it. But we're just waiting on that Parks and Rec plan and other major plans to be completed next year.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, so council, any questions, comments pertaining to Adam's report, or any comments Dan may have made? Councillor Wilton.
I'll just comment that I think this is very helpful, and I think our 15% self-imposed line is a great idea and very useful to see that each year. So I appreciate the work on that. Thank you.
Any other further comments or questions from council? Okay, thank you, Adam and Dan, for that report. I'll read the recommendation that the Council Township of Centre Wellington approve the inclusion of the 2025 draft budget debt requirements and capacity as outlined in Report Core 2024-62, dated November 5th, 2024, in the draft 2025 budget. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Evoy, seconder on that. Councillor Wilton. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's so moved. Thank you. We'll move down to item 7.3, update on operating and capital inflation, a report from Adam.
Thanks again, Mayor Waters, and through you. This report is an update on inflation. When previously presented in June as part of the pre-budget direction report, CPI, which is a proxy for operating cost increases, the inflation was sitting at 2.7%. This has softened slightly since that June report and is now sitting at 1.9%. On the NRB CPI side, which is a proxy for capital cost increases, the June detail had suggested inflation of 7.5%. This too has softened, currently sitting at 4.8%. So when using kind of our 2024 budget numbers from an operating and capital standpoint, on a blended basis, these metrics would suggest that our inflation target for 2025 should be between 2.8 and 3.2%. And with that, I'm happy to field any questions the council may have.
Thank you, Adam. Comments, questions for Adam? Councillor Wilton.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. And through you. So thank you for this report. I'm just seeing a little bit of a disconnect, and maybe you can explain it. So if we have losing the sentence. Yeah, in the absence of growth, the township's 2025 tax board operating budget would have to increase by 2.8% in order to maintain 2024 spending levels. So are we talking about if we wanted to maintain, that's the maximum tax increase, would we have to start looking at decreasing spending levels, or how would you kind of square that with not doing too much of a tax increase?
This would just suggest that all things being equal, for us to do the same thing as we had done in 2024, our costs will have gone up on a blend basis by 2.8%. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
It does. I'm just curious then, because when we get down into the 10-year forecast, we have quite a bit of spending. So I'm just curious, like, where do you kind of find that wiggle room for that additional spending when our inflationary rate already puts us at kind of staying par with 2024?
Yeah, no, certainly something that needs to be contemplated. I think from an operating budget standpoint, we try to maintain service levels unless there's something that would increase our level of service that's being proposed. Those would be sussed out and presented to council independently. So with that, while we do have kind of ebbs and flows in terms of our capital requirements, we are largely funded through our reserve funds, and we have standard contributions to capital, which remain also within our policy guidelines. So I would suggest we have to just kind of maintain where we're at in terms of the expected levels of expenditure while maintaining the inflationary rates, and those inflationary rates should really be in keeping with where we're at in terms of a tax levy increase, just to ensure that we're not falling behind and eroding our service level delivery.
Councillor Adams? Okay. Any other comments, questions from council? Okay, thank you, Adam. And we're just to receive that for information. There's no, you have to vote on that. We'll move down to item 7.4, OLG funding allocation policy, and Adam's back here at the table again.
Thanks again, Mayor Waters, and again through you. This report seeks council endorsement for the allocation of OLG proceeds within the 2025 budget. And with this report, staff are recommending amendments to the allocation policy for 2025, which would allocate the available funds as follows. Staff are recommending a 92% contribution to capital, a 4% contribution to community impact grants, a 2% contribution to heritage, and the residual 2% to the termite management subsidy program for 2025. Worth noting is that this policy would once again be reviewed as part of the 2026 budget process to ensure that allocations remain appropriate for the pressures faced by the township on an ongoing basis. So with that, I'm happy to field any questions again.
Thank you, Adam. Comments, questions from council? Councillor Jefferson.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. Through you. Just wondering why we would like to see the capital reserve fund dollar or percentage increased up to 92% from 90.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Jefferson. As stated through our 2022 asset management plan, we do have certain asset categories that remain underfunded, and we're against a fairly significant infrastructure deficit, most notably on the roads and bridges side. That's been somewhat mitigated through the implementation of the dedicated capital levy that's been directed to bridges. However, we are still trying to buy back a lot of that infrastructure deficit, and without increased investment from our own funding standpoint, we remain heavily reliant on external kind of funding sources, which we have zero control over. So by building up those capital contributions from our own tax basis standpoint, we're kind of in a position where we are better funding ourselves for the future with some stability.
Do you have a follow-up with that? I could see the wheels spinning there. Any other comments or questions from council? Okay. Oh, yes, go. Okay, Adams, Councillor Adams.
Thank you, through you. I'm just wondering if staff could speak to also the heritage portion. I know it's also going down to 2%, and it's also looking to allocate the funds to support staff positions. I don't know if this has been traditional in the past that these funds have been used to support staff, so I'm just wondering if we could get a bit of follow-up on that.
Yeah, I can take a stab at that, and if perhaps Brett would like to provide any additional comment, I would welcome his comments as well. But really, the historical funding levels from 2024 anyway was the contribution to heritage was at 3%. It's being dropped to 2%. Also with that, for a number of years, we had been building up the heritage reserve. So we have capacity within that now with the newly formed kind of grant program under the heritage banner that we feel that it is sustainable for the foreseeable future. And with the cost pressures being through the advent of the termite subsidy program, we felt that those funds could be redirected at least on an interim basis and reduced from the 3% funding level to 2%. And again, with the rollout of the grant program, there has been a co-op student that has been contemplated in the past, and that's really what these funds would be utilized for. So just the utilization of that, not kind of full-time staff, but just staff complements to supplement our existing staff structure to support the heritage grant.
Councillor Walton.
Thank you, Mayor Waters, and through you, just follow up on Councillor Adams. Is there any way we can put language in there that the change to allow for staffing is kind of for that type of temporary co-op student type of position? I don't think we'd want to see the OLG funds being used for regular staffing. So I don't know if there's some language we might need to add in there just so it's not a slippery slope to start to try and fund staff positions on a regular basis. So I don't have the wording in mind, but I'd be curious maybe your thoughts on that.
Absent any comments to the contrary from my colleagues, I don't envisage that being a problem. I think this is just as a temporary measure, and it wasn't meant to support full-time staff on an ongoing basis, so I'd have no problems making that amendment.
Councillor Yvonne.
Through you, just to clarify, and again, to go off my colleagues' conversations about that 3% to 2% change, am I to understand, just to be clear, so am I to understand that the 1% drop will be made up elsewhere, so we're still retaining roughly 3% going into our heritage?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Evoy. No, it's not going to be made up elsewhere in the interim. We do have sufficient funds through the reserve to facilitate that drop for the short term anyway, with the intent that we would revisit the policy if we have future needs beyond that.
Through Mayor Waters, just to add to Adam's response, we did have 1, if not 2 years of transfers to the Heritage Reserve Fund before the Heritage Program was actually initiated. So there's a little bit of additional funds already in the reserve. So we are reducing from 3% to 2% for 2025, and we'll revisit the numbers for 2026.
Thank you. As long as, I guess my concern, through you, sir, I guess my concern is that once it drops off, we'll forget that it was there, because I know it's easy to do. And I just want to make sure that we continue to honor the heritage piece of who we are as a community and not continue to drop off and become complacent with 2%.
Thank you. And through Mayor Waters, we're committed to reviewing this policy annually. So I don't think we're in a situation where that will happen.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, yes, Councillor Craddock.
With money not, the money's not going to the economic development, I think, and I could be wrong, a lot of that was being spent on an aggressive approach of trying to sell those lots at the business park. Do we have to, can we still maintain that approach, or do we need to, or am I wrong in general? Was that not where that fund was going?
No, the economic, thank you for the question, Councillor Craddock, and through you, Mayor Waters. No, the proceeds from the land sales for the Dixon Drive have facilitated the use of the Economic Development Reserve Fund. Those funds were utilized for the acquisition and the servicing of those lands, and through the proceeds of the sales now, that reserve has come into a positive position again. And with the perceived future land sales as well, we feel we're going to be in a position where the Economic Development Reserve will be facilitate through those land sales, and again we'll be revisiting this policy. I think the reduction from 3% last year to facilitate the termite program is just a continuation into this year, and again with the need to have this policy reviewed by council annually, we felt this was a year where we could still facilitate that with a review in future years as well.
Councillor Welton.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. Just curious, because I know tomorrow at the Healthy Communities Advisory Committee, the Community Impact Grant policy is coming forward for a review, and it does have a new name. And I see in this bylaw, or potentially has a new name if everything goes well. So I'm just curious if that's a problem from the clerk's perspective, that this bylaw actually has the current name of that policy and not the potentially new name. If it needs to be a placeholder to amend that at some point.
Yeah, through you, because this is committee of the whole, we'll have time to review that bylaw before it comes to council for the correct wording.
Thank you. And just quick, if we did want to add in a small bracket, it could be under 7D, heritage related program costs and studies. You could put in brackets, co-op or intern student position only. Would kind of get that amendment just so we don't start a slippery slope of leading to staffing changes.
Through Mayor Waters, I believe the reserve is also used to actually provide the heritage grant to recipients. So it's for program costs plus. So you're just saying add in there that we can include co-op related costs. Okay. Okay.
Any further comments, questions? Okay. I'm going to read the recommendation.
Are you accepting that as a amendment, or are they just going to amend the policy as directed? So
yeah.
As directed?
Yep.
And I'm just going to add the words as amended.
Okay.
And I'll put the verbiage up top.
So where do is that?
Yeah.
Okay. Recommendation that council, Township of Centre Wellington, authorize the mayor and clerk to sign a bylaw to amend the OLG funding allocation policy, and that
as amended.
Yep, as amended, and that the council of Township of Centre Wellington directs staff to use the amended policy in 2025 budget as outlined in report core 2024-65 dated November 5th, 2024, and that the policy be reviewed as part of the 2026 budget. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Welton. Seconder on that, Councillor McDonald. No? Oh, sorry, I did see it.
Okay.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? So moved. Okay. Down to item 7.5, 2025 budget public engagement survey results. Adam, you're still here.
Yes, thanks again, Mayor Waters, and through you. This is an information report to provide council an update on the results of the public engagement survey. Most important areas identified by the 111 respondents through October 27th are roads and bridges, parks, sports fields and trails, fire and rescue services, growth management, and recreational programs and services. And when asked what tax-supported services most in need of additional resources are, the top three areas identified were roads and bridges, growth management, and parks, sports fields, and trails. With that, staff will provide an update on the survey results as part of the deliberation process, but are being presented here for informational purposes. And with that, I'm happy to field any questions that council may have.
Thank you, Adam. Comments, questions from council? Councillor Wilton.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. And sorry, I just have to make a comment just because I sent you an email about it. Just with the population of approximately 31,000, I think we have in our community now, survey results of 111 as of the date that you grab them. So there could be more by the time we get to our full budget process, is not representative from a statistical perspective. So we should only look at it as those 111 people said those things. It can't be extrapolated further to the community. So for a population of 32,000, we should be at about 380 for a decent survey sample. So which is doable, but we might not get there, but maybe we will. So I just want to caution people that, because the one part was like we had the majority of people saying increase user fees to pay for fees. That's like those particular people said that. It's not a representative of the broader community. So, but thank you for the efforts to do the public engagement. So appreciate that.
Further comments, questions from council? Okay, I'm going to read the recommendation. No, I'm going to not. I'm just going to accept that from Adam. Thank you. Okay, let's go down to 7.6, 2025 preliminary capital forecasts, 2025 to 2034. Adam.
Thanks again, Mayor Waters. And through you, this report builds on the 2025 preliminary draft capital budget presented in September. And has been the case historically, the capital budget is approved for the upcoming year. The 2 years following the capital budget are approved for staff planning purposes, and the remaining 7 years of the forecast are shown for long-term planning purposes. Staff are seeking council endorsement to include the 10-year capital forecast into the 2025 budget. And Mark and I are happy to present this forecast in greater detail and walk through page by page to address any questions the council may have at this time. So I will, with your permission, Mayor Waters, I'll share my screen and we can start walking through the 10-year budget.
Take us for a walk. Yes.
Can I ask a question now? Thank you, through you. So I understand we're just accepting this to be put into the draft budget, but so there is opportunity at the next budget meeting to make amendments and stuff, even within this capital budget. This is kind of just setting the preliminary estimate at this point.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Addendums, and through you, Mayor Waters. Yeah, I mean, we're happy to field any questions that council may have at this point and hear council's direction if there is anything contrary to this. But the request at this time is to incorporate this we can chat in greater detail about this through the deliberation process, but we're certainly happy to hear your comments now.
Councillor McDonald.
To you, Mayor Waters. There's 2 lines for Middlebrook Bridge. So I still see 2028, the removal.
We shouldn't get ahead of ourselves. We're just going to go page by page.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yep. So, yep. Okay.
Okay, so for the first page before you now on screen, we've got the categories of studies and corporate, predominantly IT and S. I know the font size is a little small, but I can certainly try to blow that up a little bit.
Councillor Wilton.
Sorry. Question's actually probably for Dan, I would assume, or maybe you, actually. Just curious, when you say municipal accommodation tax implementation, but it's under the category of studies, is it a study or is it an implementation or quasi both? So thank you.
Thank you. And through Mayor Waters, I think it's both. We'll wait for the results of the economic development and tourism strategy, but we'll be looking for council direction after that strategy is approved to move forward to study how to implement a MAT and actually implement it. all in 1 year.
Councillor Craddock.
I'll just piggyback on that if that's okay, and through you. I see for DEI, inclusion study and implementation, the study, I believe, is done and implemented now. I'm just curious why it would be still under studies. Or am I wrong? And there's still a study. Yeah, and why implementation? I'm sure there's ongoing costs associated, but...
This is an amount, I believe it's I want to say 30,000, right?
Right,
Yeah, it's a top up to what's already in the budget for additional opportunities to initiate the diversity and inclusion program. And that is going to come to DEI for further discussion, but we have to implement and create that program. And this is a top up to what's already in the capital reserve for DEI. I don't know if you have anything to add.
Through Mayor Waters, yeah, just to add to Pat's response, this was an initiative that the DEI committee brought forward to council. Our manager of community development did a high-level report to council, and there'll be more detail in the future. But this is that DEI advisory committee taking on an initiative, and there's funding implications for that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councillor Wilton. Okay, Councillor Adams.
Thank you, through you. I think I actually just want to start with a comment. I do find this process a little bit like a scavenger hunt sometime, where you're sitting with like the 2024 spreadsheets before you. You're kind of like looking and comparing the two. And I'm just wondering if there's any ways moving forward. I know this is probably like pulled also from like a report or something too, so I'm not asking for any hopefully not too customization, but like, would it be too much to ask for like, new items maybe that weren't in the previous budget to be like bolded, or if they've like increased significantly, to some way to like signify this? We've done this year again, but just kind of a general comment going forward. Yeah.
Through you, Mayor Waters. So one way to identify things, I alluded to this back at the last meeting in September, I think it was. So anything that starts with a 2025 for their number is new. Okay. Anything that's with a year, that's a year it first made an appearance in the 10-year forecast. Okay. Anything that starts with like a 330, a 105, so something that's not a year, that denotes an existing capital project. So an example would be the very first item, 105-0641, procurement process enhancements. That's an existing project. So what you're looking at there is a top up. Okay. And then I think the last thing you might find would be an F project, and those are ancient projects that existed in the 10-year forecast from 2007, I think it was. Okay. And there are still a handful of those in here.
Councillor Evelyn.
Through you, sorry, thank you. I didn't hear, how do we know what a top up is? What's the indicator?
The top up will be a project that starts with something that's not a year. So the first item there, the procurement process enhancements, 105-0641.
Oh, got it.
Okay, you'll see 301, 330, 360,
yep. Great,
anything that's basically not a year.
That wasn't my question, but thank you. My question is, I'm looking at the public engagement strategy. It's a big number, and I know we'll be looking for a lot more detail about what that's going to look like. If it's determined, just on the budget process, if it's determined that we're not going to need as much, or we're going to need more than, can you just qualify and or reiterate what the process is when we get there?
Yes, thank you. And through Mayor Waters, we'll do a formal request for proposal process for that project. We'll go to the market and get bids. And if we end up not using the full amount, it'll go back into capital reserves. So we don't have a really good idea of what this could cost at this point. This type of project could get really expensive, but we're not entirely sure at this point. But we won't use it if we don't need it.
So I'm not hearing any more questions in terms of what we're seeing on page 1. So next one would be corporate for other municipal buildings, fire services, health services, and the beginning of transportation and public works.
Councillor McDonald.
Sure. Through you, Mayor Waters. Under municipal buildings, right? We're on that section now. Tourism office renovations, 35,000. What is that for? Basically.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. That funding is going to be to look at adding a staff washroom. I think I did bring this up at a previous meeting when we were talking about Molochs. It's a individual staff washroom that we're looking at having it in place in that facility. It will now increase some more public washroom ability with the current stuff that we have on site already.
Councillor Evelyn.
Actually, with your permission, I'd like to go back because I wasn't quite done on page 1 when we moved, so apologies. 2 questions. With regards to the photocopiers acquisition, is that like all the photocopiers? There's a $40,000. I'm just trying to figure out why we're not staggering this a little bit more. I have a follow-up to that too.
Certainly. Thank you for the question, Councillor Evoy. This is basically a provision for new photocopiers. We run all of our photocopier fleet to basically end of life. And when they become cost prohibitive to continue to repair, we look at a replacement option. So this is just a provision. There's none that are specifically earmarked for replacement this year, but as they come to end of life, this is our replacement kind of opportunity.
Okay. The other one was around the STR software. I'm unclear what is the short-term rental software. What does that look like? What is that?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Voy, and perhaps Carrie can back me up on this, but really this would be the software required to monitor and maintain the licensing program that's being contemplated and is still being reviewed by the advisory committee. So this is just a provision. Should that be endorsed by council, this gives us an opportunity to move that initiative forward in the future.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're all finished this page then we'll move along to the next page, back again. So, okay, so this is pertaining to the second page. Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Eboy.
Thank you, through you, sir. With regards to municipal buildings, I see the tourism office renos. Fergus, Laura, can I have a little more detail on that? Oh, sorry.
Sure.
Why are we not doing it?
Yeah, that is for the Laura Tourism Office.
Follow up, sir. I don't see anywhere on there that we're looking at updating the Fergus space, which is in real need.
You're speaking on Provost Lane, those washrooms. I do know we do have some equipment replacement funding that is set aside for next year, which you won't see there in the capital forecast. It'll be under the equipment replacement, which will be for some potential new flooring and upgrade to some of the plumbing fixtures at that facility because we recognize they are in dire need.
The building, may I follow up? With respect to, is there any discussion about doing a little, like we're doing a lot in Allura at that building, and I think the Fergus building is in quite a bit of need. Not to your point, it is tired and it does deserve some attention, and I'm wondering why it's not in next year's budget.
So there is, through the building condition audit, we have been looking at what items have been put aside from that condition audit, which was back in 2021. So there are some other items that are coming up in the future, such as, I believe off the top of my head, the shingles on the top of the roof and some different items inside of it. So there is some items laid out in the building condition audit, which will follow through the equipment replacement program. Not unless it's a major item, it'll come through the capital.
Councillor Adams.
Thank you. For you. This would be for Adam and Mark. Again, I'm going back to like format or like trying to understand. So if we look at health services, the Block D development in Bellside, I understand we're going to be having a presentation on that upcoming, as our council has not received really any information on that project. And so this shows as a 2016 project, but it's doubled in price since last year's capital tenure. So that's kind of where I was saying, if there was a way to like bold or highlight, or even in the report kind of bring to highlight items that have potentially like doubled. I understand the year format and everything, but these are kind of those items that I find like hard to catch sometimes, and just to understand what's, because obviously it could be just a scope change and like pricing, or like is it just an inflation cost from like when the project was first designed, or is it a change in scope? It's hard to tell.
I think perhaps going back to my previous comments in terms of year one being what's being endorsed by council, years 2 and 3 being for staff planning purposes, and then the remaining 7 years being for forecast. I think as items come closer, we get more refined pricing and better line of sight in terms of what the actual requirements are, and that's why you will see some of that fluctuation.
Okay, any other comments or questions for this page, number 2? Yep.
Thank you, sir. Just looking at the cemetery, just to qualify, or for whoever I would ask, I'm not sure. Is that to when we're doing the back of the cemetery where we're leveling it off and whatnot? Yeah.
Thanks for Councillor Buehler for the question there through the mayor. And so to kind of respond to Councillor Adams also and the plans in that area. So we will be bringing a report on November 12th on Tuesday regarding the plans for Block D. You're correct. We refer to that area as Block D, and we do have plans for kind of the next phase of development in that area, to develop the entire area, but it will be, at the next kind of piece of that area that we will be developing, and we'll have a fulsome report for you, providing an update on the design and the budget and everything else.
Councillor McDonald, is this related to this? No, stay here, Adam, please.
Through you, Mayor Waters. With cemetery in general, I know just bouncing on what Councillor Adams said, I know there's something coming in a further agenda. Will these costs be offset by purchases of lots and cemetery purchases in general? These costs? Oh, so not you. Sorry.
Through you, Mayor Waters. So all the items under the cemetery kind of caption are all funded from a cemetery reserve we have. Okay.
Any other comments or questions to page 2? Okay, let's move. Oh, yes. Okay, Councillor Adams.
Thank you. I think at the end of page 2, we get into transportation and public works. And so just a general question about, I guess, the bridges specifically. I don't know. I can't recall when the last time we had our bridge replacement schedule. But I'm just wondering if staff could highlight here what bridge projects, and again, there's a lot of, I think, culvert and stuff, but which bridge projects just have been moved up versus moved like back?
Yeah, I think our designs were to have that included as part of the budget book when drafted. So we'd be happy to discuss those in greater detail, and those show kind of the transition from year to year. If memory serves, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but that will provide us a little bit better context, and that will be available on November 22nd.
Councillor Evoy. Okay, so if we're finished page 2.
Oh, then I'm on page 3.
Well, we're on page 2, and so we're going.
No, mine says page 5 for the next one with 8th Line Bridge. I want transportation public works. Yeah. Oh, yeah, mine says 5 of 14.
Okay.
It's the page number at the bottom right.
Yeah, isn't that? Yeah. So we just finished page 2. Now we're moving on to page 3. Go through, make sure that there's nothing more on page 3 here.
This is page 3.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, it is. All right. Thank you, Mayor Waters. And for those at home, we were all trying to figure out what page we were on. So, down on what line item is it? It's the, see, I zoomed out. 21 WG and 29 WG bridge transportation study, and I think it's $100,000. 2025-024. Just curious what that study is and about that.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Wilton, for the question. So up in kind of the Living Springs area, we have the Queen Mary Bridge 30 WG on Side Road 15, which is closed. And then we have Bridge 21 WG and 29 WG. We had set aside some budget this year to do a study for Bridge 30 WG, the Queen Mary Bridge, which is closed. And then we identified an opportunity to do more of a regional study for those 3 bridges. We've been taking this approach in other areas where we combine a number of bridges in the same area in the same EA style of study to determine the best alternative to service that entire area. So we decided to take that approach. And so we needed some additional budget because we've now included the scope or expanded the scope of the study to be for 3 bridges, not 1 bridge. So that the 100,000 is a bit of a top up so that we can study those 3 bridges at the same time.
So am I correct in understanding then just down a few lines or rows, then you'd have the Queen Mary, Side Road 15, 30 WG. It has $200,000 for 2026, but the 100,000 for 21 and 29 is study going to happen over 2 years or is...
Yeah. So yes, thank you for the question. So good point. So it's with these bridges, we kind of, it's a 3-year process. We do kind of study, then design, then construction. The funds that you see in 26 for 30 WG are actually design funds. So first we want to get through the study, establish a preferred option, then depending on the outcome of that, then proceed to design with some or all of the bridges.
Is there any way that could be renamed to something? There was confusion amongst my constituents that was referring to Bridge at County Road 29, going over from County Road 29 to Anderson, that was back in the fray. So, but we're very far away from that location. We're up further north and north, like 5th and 6th line and Side Road 15, or 6th and 7th line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the comment there. And I guess you're referring to the name of that bridge, Bridge 29 WG?
Yeah, the 29 WG, I think, has raised a flag for some people.
Okay.
So it's confused with 29, County Road 29. So I don't know if there's a way to regroup those 3 bridges as you're discussing in terms of a regional neighborhood kind of study. But just a comment. But I will allay concerns.
Okay, so we're on page 3. So questions are relate. Okay, we'll start. Councillor Evoy.
Thank you. At the top of page 3, pedestrian bridge behind Fergus Grand Theatre for 150. Can somebody speak to me about that and tell me what we're looking at for timeline and what you want to do?
Yeah. Thanks, Councillor Evoy, for the question and through the mayor. So there is a structure. It's kind of attached to the back of the Fergus Grand Theatre, and it's like a steel I-beam structure. It's part of our. It falls under our biannual OSIM inspections. It falls under the criteria that meets would be defined as a bridge that we need to inspect every 2 years. So we've been keeping a close eye on the structure. It's quite old. The steel is rusting, rotting out essentially, and the whole superstructure needs to be replaced. So that is funding to basically replace that structure. Yeah. So it's you wouldn't even know it's there, but it is what we categorize as a pedestrian bridge. Yeah.
Councillor McDonald, and then Councillor Jefferson.
Through Mayor Waters, 2021-070 Middlebrook Place Boundary Bridge removal. I'm just looking for a bit of an update. Like I see we still have a placeholder for 2028 for removal, as previously discussed in a previous council, but have we heard anything from Woolwich or anything about next steps or anything?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor McDonald, through the mayor. So we have had discussions with the Township of Woolwich. We've been coordinating with any changes in terms of the timing of that of the budget for that project. We're also engaging with some of these groups that have come forward expressing an interest in preserving that bridge. So I think for now, our position remains the same, where it's that there's some time before that removal is planned. And if in the interim, some groups can come forward with some opportunities in terms of whether it's grant funding or private fundraising, that we would be willing to entertain those types of options.
Councillor Jefferson.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. I was just curious about the Side Road 10 culvert and the Side Road 4 culverts. Just looking back to our 2024, they were preliminary approval for projects, for our capital project highlights. Both of those culverts have now been bumped. Sorry, looking at it, I don't know what to look at. They've both been bumped out to like 2030. So I'm just curious as to why they were pushed back so far, and that they were kind of approved last year as a capital project.
Again, thank you, Councillor Jefferson, for the question there. So, year to year, there can be quite a bit of shifting in terms of the bridge projects. Typically, it's driven by, we do owe some inspections on so that's a regulatory inspection we have to do on these bridges and culverts. And we get new information from time to time based on those inspections in terms of what the needs are at a given bridge for rehabilitation or replacement. How long can we kind of maintain that bridge? So I think the two examples that you provided, we kind of looked at the entire capital plan and the priorities, and we determined that there were some projects that maybe became higher priority based on those inspection reports that we wanted to bring forward, and as a result, we had to push some projects out to make the capital plan work.
Councillor Adams.
Thank you, through you. I'm not sure. I'll wait to see. I'll ask my question. Page 3, downtown Fergus streetlight replacements. We did have a wholesome discussion at a recent meeting on that, and had identified some concerns about the lighting at downtown Fergus. This is a 2025 project. Has this taken into account some of the concerns that we had raised at that meeting, or what would be involved in this project that we're seeing here?
Afternoon again. Yes, it does take into consideration those things. We've done some data collections, additional review of the condition of the lighting out there right now. So we have specific locations identified for replacement as well as for additional lighting. There's also been some inquiries about lighting in the Provost parking lot, as well as the Curling Club parking lot. So some of those things we're actually moving ahead just on an operational basis, and then to be kind of capture the broader scope through this capital project.
Okay, any further questions or comments for page 3 here? Okay, let's move on to page 4. Councillor Wilton.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. I have about partway down the page, first line to Anderson Street Relief Road to Dixon Drive exit, I guess. Anderson Street Relief Road, first line to Lamont Street. I'm just curious what those two items actually are. They're not for a long way out, but I'm just curious why they're actually on what they are. I guess that'd be for Colin.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Wilton, and through Mayor Waters. So, yeah, those projects, so just let me move, 2022, 14 and 15, is that the ones? Yeah, so those are the ones identified in the Transportation Master Plan that essentially, right, are the extension of 29 that kind of scoot around to the west of that Anderson, Sunnybray area. So those are, again, identified in the master plan and our development charges as well. And those are kind of placeholders that are hanging out in year 10 as a result.
So are they still relevant though, given our previous decision at council to not support a bridge at 29? The 29 we just discussed. So wouldn't they be contingent on a bypass bridge crossing from County Road 18 over to through Pierpoint or beside Pierpoint?
Yeah, through the mayor, I think staff's position is that there, you know, this is pretty early days and all this, that there'd have to be a lot of study, like an environmental assessment, looking at options. The transportation master plan has effectively, in the county's plan, it looks at this as well. Their road master action plan looks at there's a need there. There's a need for additional capacity, and the exact location of where that's going to be is going to be subject to future study. And so, yeah, so I think lots of time to figure that out. And yeah, there'll be like another environmental assessment, basically, with public consultation and looking at options to figure that this project out. Yeah.
Councillor Adams.
Thank you. Through you, just for clarification, when we look down on the 22 projects, like the Guelph Street projects there, and we have like in brackets the SFA, which I'm assuming
Service financing agreement, actually.
Or service financing agreement.
Yes.
Okay, related to the South Fergus expansion. So right now they're kind of all pushed out in the 10, but we would see that project coming up within the next 10 years. So like.
Yeah. Hopefully, yeah, we've applied for a grant, right? So the Housing Enabling Water Systems Fund, we reapplied for the second intake just a couple of weeks ago. And yeah, hopefully, you know, that gets moved forward if we're successful. If we're successful, a separate report will come to council with the financing strategy on how that project will be implemented. Yeah, and then we'll update all this timing at that time.
Through Mayor Waters, just to add to that, we have a policy where any project labeled SFA, we keep in year 10 until we know the timing, and then we accelerate it. We, at one point, tried to guess where the developments were going to happen, and that's very difficult to do, so we decided not to try that.
Through you, sir, thank you. This is going to probably really show what I don't understand, and I apologize in advance, but I'm sure I'm not the only one when we invite others to look at this. We know that there's a lot of road repairs that are coming. Let's say Hill Street, just talked about it earlier today. But I don't see those here. I see all these big ones. Is that because road repairs don't go on this per se? Like, I'm just looking to better understand, if you don't mind. Thank you.
No, great question. Yeah, we're getting there. So we've in the budget and the 10-year capital forecast, and even when we break it down annually to the current years, we separate the rural projects from the urban projects. So right now, this page shows basically all rural projects or road projects. The next page you'll see the urban projects start to show up, and so that's so Hill Street is coming. Yeah, it's there. We're just not off the page yet. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments, questions for this page, page 4? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go on to page 5. Yeah. Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters, now that we're in the urban roads, It is 2016-056, Princess Street, Alora Moore to David Street. So that's the Princess Street. That is so awful.
Yes.
The whole street. And this is from 2016, but we're not doing it until, hang on a second here, 2028, 2027. Yeah.
That's correct. Yep. So, and it's
more than 10 years.
It's a full recon. So it's a full reconstruction. So
Yes.
it's water main,
Sewer,
sewer,
everything?
storm sewers, curb and gutter, new sidewalk. It'll be a full reconstruction there.
Okay. Well, at least I have something to tell people, but I would like to see that moved up if we could. It's pretty awful. Okay, thank you.
Through Mayor Waters, just a point here, just because a project's coded as 2016 doesn't mean it was placed in the year 2016. It just means it was set up in 2016. So it's been waiting since 2016 to do this work. It was set up as a project in our forecast in the year 2016, but it was probably a later year.
Just for follow-up, Mayor, through you. So when was it placed? I guess is my question, and how long have we waited?
Mark will know. He's all seeing.
It's because on this list it looks like more than 10 years, so for clarification purposes.
So in 2016, when it was first created, it was placed in, it must be year 9 in 2024 is when it was anticipated in 2016 or 2016. Okay.
Councillor Evoy.
Thank you, through you, sir. The traffic calming measures. So many of us, I'm sure, are not unlike myself, having received many communications from our residents with regards to why aren't they up? Why are they down so soon? Why aren't they here? Why are they there? Purchased quite a few sets, which is great. I really celebrate that. I'm curious, is there an opportunity or discussion, or are we looking at, and I guess planning, you all would know best, will there be more of those? And is there an opportunity? They seem to be so incredibly effective at dealing with our traffic. And I believe a colleague recently spoke to just lowering the speed limits in our areas, which would probably be a really big service. But right now, this is a problem. And we know for a fact that speeding has increased, not just here in our community, but everywhere. We're dealing with our community, and I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to, to look at more. I know we use them during the detours, etc., but they're working. And I'm just wondering, is there an opportunity to look at more of these, or are you waiting for council to discuss lowering the speed limit?
Through the mayor. So, I think we're taking a policy approach to implementation of traffic calming. So when we receive a concern, that triggers us to do an evaluation where we go out, grab data, kind of validate the concern, and then annually in April, we're reporting to council as to what the results of our analysis are and recommending any measures. So I think that process is going to continue. I think what we're looking to do is what appropriate measures should be taken. And now that we've got lots of experience now with the center line delineators, with the speed cushions now this year, updating our policy and bringing that back to council for discussion. We can't put these on every single street. They are quite labor intensive to install and remove. And so where are they appropriate and where? So, and that's really best addressed through policy, which we will be bringing back to council very soon. Yeah.
Okay. Any other further questions or comments for page 5? Okay. Seeing none, then we'll move to page 6. Councillor Jefferson.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. Through you. Mine isn't like to a specific thing, but I just see on this page that it's got a lot of new pedestrian crossings and things like that. When different developments have come to us, Parkside Drive East and Highway 6, and then there's another development, and then the increase with the high school, the Catholic school on Strathallan. There's been a lot of concern about access from Parkside Drive East onto number 6 and being able to get there and safety of kids crossing and things like that. I was just wondering if there could be some consideration brought, because we've had a lot of delegations come to speak to us about that. So I was just wondering if we could just put a pin in that for budget later 2025 or even into 2026, but that it could be considered, please.
There we go. Through Mayor Waters, yeah, I think like staff can look at the concerns received. Certainly, like even through the active transportation plan, like we could maybe take some of that feedback through that development application, and use that in that analysis to see, like we're looking at improving our pedestrian facilities throughout the community. So that feedback would be valuable in that assessment. So I don't think we have that feedback now as part of that study, but we'll certainly speak to planning and get that. Thank you.
Councillor Evoy.
Through you, sir. Thank you so much. Boy, there's just so much going on. I just want to take a breath and say thank you, because to see how many roads we are addressing and how hard our staff is working on addressing endless roads and situations. So I just want to take a minute and thank you. I noticed the kind of a double call, if you don't mind. I'll start with Storybrooke. That's a large number, and it's preceded by the word reconstruction. So of Colburn Street to Storybrooke, westerly limit. It's the largest, probably one of the largest numbers we've seen on this roads area. Can you just give a brief update what that includes?
Yeah, for sure. Do you want to? Sure. I'm going to hand things over to Adam. You guys are probably tired of listening to me, so go ahead. Thank you. So, Councillor Evoy, thanks for the question. Just want to preface this with on Tuesday, November 12th, we will be bringing forward a service finance agreement with the developer to finance that construction project. And there is quite a there's a split, development charges split on that project that the developer is actually paying a large share of the capital cost of the project through development charges early payment. I don't have those numbers right in front of me, but that will be coming on November 12th. And in terms of the scope of the project, so you can picture Colburn Street currently. It's rural, there's ditches, and that'll be, road will be converted to an urban cross section. So it'll have curb and gutter, storm sewers, off-road multi-use paths, active transportation improvements like pedestrian crossings. So it is quite a, decorative features like street trees and so it is a full reconstruction. It also includes the extension of a water main, but in terms of the cost, it's because the road, is getting kind of the full treatment, and there's going to be a lot added to that streetscape.
Thank you. And the other half was around the late date for all the implementation of signalizations. Everywhere I look, for all of the ones I see, it's quite far off when I look on this list. Is that because we're not moving forward with even thinking about those for a while?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I think many of those are funded through, they're related to development, and they're funded through service finance agreements. And I think that's why a lot of those are sitting out in year 10, is because they are, they will be triggered by development. And then as per the previous discussion, they would be then brought forward in the capital plan.
Councillor Adams.
Sorry, I did, and then I skipped over. I think I was wondering, it's a new project 2025 under storm drainage, the open channel rehabilitation. Just wondering if just get a general awareness of like what that project is.
The open channel rehabilitation is essentially a drainage channel. We have several in the township. This particular channel I'm actually looking at is the one in behind the Canadian Tire. So what happens is these open channels actually overgrow with weeds and sediment and whatnot, and we have to go in and actually clean them all back out again. So it doesn't allow the drainage for the stormwater to go through. So.
Okay. Questions, comments for page 6? Yes, go ahead.
Just a general comment. I think if I'm reading this right, the total for roadways urban has actually gone down from like our forecasted 2025 capital forecast. I'm just wondering what may have led to that. I could be reading this completely wrong.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Adams. Through the mayor, we'll be looking at a full reconciliation in terms of where we were from the September meeting to where we are present day, and we can address that once we've kind of had a chance to go through, if you're okay with that.
Okay. If there's no other comments or questions, we'll leave page 6 and go to page 7. Okay, looks like we're okay with page 7. We'll go to page 8. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, through you. Also wondering if we can get just kind of staff to speak on 2016-017 project, which was the water meter modernization replacement. It looks like this is going to be happening over like the next 2 years. Yeah.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Mayor. So the 2025-2026 water meter replacement program is it's coming up. Our meters are through their lifespan, through their asset lifespan. So it's time to replace them. So we have about 5,000 to replace. So what we're doing is we've established Neptune as our vendor of record to work with alongside, and we're going to start the project up, do part of it at the end of 2025 and roll it into 2026. So does that answer your question? More or less.
Councillor Evoy.
Thank you, through you, sir. Again, looking for clarification. When I see that we're doing road work and wastewater work on the same road, are they done? Are the projects done simultaneously or one after another?
Who would like to take that on?
I can perhaps start, and then if it requires additional clarity, I would rely on my colleagues. But yeah, typically when you have a full reconstruction or what we would refer to as an integrated project that would address water, wastewater, and the road surface all within one project, even though they're delineated differently because of the different funding sources. That's why they're shown in different areas within the report.
Thank you for clarifying.
Okay, if there's not any other comments or questions, we'll move from page 8 to page 9. Councillor Evoy.
What is third-party leak detection?
So through Mayor Waters, third-party leak detection is basically contracted services that are performed, I think, every couple of years, once every 2 years, to basically assess our water distribution system for leaks. So they do like an acoustic sounding of our water infrastructure to listen for leaks in the system. When they discover them, that triggers us to do a repair. So so we're very proactive and make sure our system is as tight as possible.
Thank you.
Any other comments for page 9? Okay, we'll move from page 9 to page 10. Councillor Welton.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. Just clarification on the Bellwood Hall project. There's $450,000 earmarked for 2025. I believe we had a conversation that there was additional funds available to do the design and the renovation. So I just want to clarify what all is in that project.
This top up here would bring the total amount available to about 780,000 for that project.
Any other comments or yes, Councillor Wilton?
Yes, I was just curious. There's a line item for the Fergus Grand Theatre, and I was just having a conversation with Councillor Jefferson and some other people the other day, and noticed this myself. I'm curious about the walkway on the outside of the Grand Theatre that goes beside, I think it's wood, that goes along the side and then back down the stairs towards Templin Gardens. And it seems like it is in need of repair. So I'm just curious if there's maybe thought to adding a line item for a bigger project, if it can coincide with the other project with the Fergus Grand Theatre at the back, or I'm not sure if there's something that can be done there. It just looks like it could need some TLC.
Unfortunately, Casey had to head out, but as he has somewhere he needed to be. I think you're referring to, I think it's a bit of a staircase that comes down. So yeah, that work is getting done immediately because it is in very poor shape. So we just issued a PO for that.
Okay. Any other comments, questions for this page? Councillor Yvonne.
Thank you, through you, sir. I'm guessing that we'll have a lot more to look at after we've done our plan. I just feel like there's so much that we're planning in years from now with regards to rec, and I know that you guys are working really hard. Can you just speak to that, please?
Yeah. If you look at the 10-year forecast, there's not a lot sort of after 4 or 5 years in the plan. And I think once the Parks and Recreation plan is completed, council will have an opportunity to look at those recommendations. Staff will be able to bring back opportunities to consider how those projects would lay out over the next 10, 20, 30 years, and what are the priorities. So you may see a lot of shuffling, even what's already in the 3, 4, 5 year and beyond now. You'll see some projects earmarked in year 10. They're sitting there waiting for us to understand the full scope of them within this new plan. So great question. And that sort of explains why it kind of looks a bit blank beyond 2029. Yeah.
Councillor Adams.
I may be jumping a little bit ahead. I might be on page 11, but it's within the parks section here.
So what maybe we'll do is we'll finish this page and then.
No problem.
Okay. Anybody else for this page? Okay, so we'll move from page 10 to page 11. Okay, Councillor Adams.
Thank you. I do believe, so we have a couple, again, some shifts happening, and like when parks were on the schedule, either they're like kind of being pushed ahead or pushed out. It looks like one of the ones that have been pushed out is like the Milburn Park. And I'm just kind of curious for the reason of that. We are
515, 1096. That's what we're
96. Yeah. 550, 1096.
So the Milburn playground and washroom. Yeah. So due to inability to get that design done this year, the design money is still sitting there to be used in 2025 to design that, and with the build intended to be in 2026. So it did get moved forward from the capital build out portion was moved from 25 to 26.
Thank you. And just clarification in terms of the inability to get to that design. Is that like we sent it out and we weren't getting, or is that just stuffing capacity, or
That's a great question. So within the business plan, a number of items, I think we've been through that, have been brought into this year's scope. A number of projects that hadn't been anticipated have taken staff time. And so our ability to get that design work, RFP out, was not completed in 2025 with enough time for us to have runway to actually begin that design. So we decided to make sure that that gets into the 2025 business plan, and you'll have an opportunity to see that in a future meeting.
Thank you.
Councillor Yafley.
Thank you, through you, sir. A couple of things. One thing, just a comment. Love that I'm seeing a water bottle filling station coming up to Victoria Park. Thank you. That's really important. I'd like to see as many as possible. And I don't understand the trail. Sorry, what's the person's name? The trail groomer, I believe, is what the line is. Trail groomer not coming for until 26.
So the trail groomer is 2 pieces of equipment you'll see in the forecast in 2026. Our intent is in 2025 operationally to develop trail grooming and maintenance standards, which we don't currently have. Bring those to council, and then at 2026, you'll look at us also adding additional couple of summer students and the equipment so that we can actually focus on trail grooming.
Can I follow up with that, sir? As a follow-up, thank you. And I know it seems like a minimal thing, but I'd love to see that we're recognizing the need for garbage receptacles on our trails. And where on the line, if we would see it on the line, just so many of them, we can't leave it all up to the GRCA. We absolutely have some ownership there. And I'm wondering why we don't see more, and could we ensure that we've got the funding to do that going forward?
I think that garbage receptacles would not eclipse a $5,000 capital budget. It would be more in our operational maintenance budgets. However, as we look at the maintenance and what is our minimum standard, it's everything from that to trail signage, to grooming, to pruning, to all of those kinds of steps. So I think you'll see some focus on that. However, if there's a specific spot on a trail that is of a concern, we just need to know those coordinates, and then we can go take a look.
Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Mayor Waters, Confederation Park improvements is still for 2026. And I know there's been some donated funds for that. Does that include those funds or no?
I'm not familiar with funds that have been donated for that project, but okay. I'll let Mark just take a quick look to see if that is something that I'm just misremembering.
Maybe while
only because I was recently asked.
Oh, no.
We just had an internet loss, but let us follow up with that question at the next budget opportunity. And but I'm not familiar with that donated money. If there is a reserve, there we go.
Okay, so went old school here and went back to the hard copies. Looks like we did get some RTO4 money. I guess I can't tell you off the top of my head when we got it without digging through the system, but we did get 6,000. As of the end of September, there was about 38,000 existing in that project.
So yeah, we did get some money up front from RTO4, and that was used to do some of the survey work that needs to be done preliminary to getting some more design work done. We needed to understand the slopes and areas topography. So that's what that was. That work has already preliminary been done.
Councillor Wilton.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Waters. And my question is about Webster Park. And I see it's still out at 2027. And maybe not enough funding either to really do a full kind of overhaul of that park. So I'm just curious, now that we might be potentially losing Strathallan Park in that part of Fergus, I think we had discussed during those discussions, maybe give a little bit more attention to some of the other green space and parkland in that northeast quadrant of Fergus, and Webster Park would be an obvious choice. So I'm just curious if there's any opportunity to move Webster Park up and maybe give it a little more of a, not just a playground equipment replacement, but more of what is the whole park being used for? Because there's an old baseball diamond there, and I think some of the other findings have been to take those out maybe and renovate the whole place.
Yeah.
So thank you.
So we're just looking up, there is 2 portions of funding for Webster Park. One is the replacement schedule, and that is also $85,000 in 2028 to be added to this funds, which will look at, as you said, there's an old ball diamond, there's kind of some open space to reconsider refurbishment of the entire park.
Can it be moved forward at all, closer to 2026?
We'll take a look at that. If we did move it out, then we have to find something to move. Yeah. Let us take that for consideration. If we move something up, then we have to move something out. So we would have to take a look at what that compromise is.
Councillor Adams.
Thank you, through you. Again, with this conversation of moving things up, moves things out, again, just my concerns with Confederation Park. This is something that I think it started with the previous council as well. And it really is, I think, it's a special park because it's like right by the water. It could be really kind of become like kind of the Bissell Park, Ballora to Fergus. I'm really concerned with seeing it pushed out again another year. I'd actually like to see that pushed up. We have, we set a priority short term. We're going to say we're going to do the study and we're going to implement it in 1 year. That's an aggressive approach. I think most of us around this room has spoke about Confederation Park. I do believe it's a priority to this council. So I would really like staff to kind of take that away into consideration. I know there's a lot going on with like the Parks and Rec Master Plan, but those projects that have been kind of, with kind of like the past strategic action plan, which included things like Confederation Park, which included things like the indoor turf training facility. I think they really, they are projects that I would consider should be high priority in this Parks and Rec project list. Thank you.
Did you want me to respond? Okay. So as far as the turf facility, that is absolutely one of the 4 parts of the Parks and Recreation Plan project. So with that information, we'll have armed a lot of detail about what that may or may not look like going forward, cost and all of those recommendations. The feasibility, that's a feasibility study. So as far as Confederation Park, to try and accomplish the design, public engagement, and then construction in 1 year can be challenging. We hear your feedback. And I guess with that, what we're trying to do at Confederation Park is not just clean it up, and it's a reimagination of how that park would look. Are we extending the trail? Are we adding a playground? What does the community want? And so I really don't want to shorten the community engagement opportunity on that project. So I think we hear you. You want us to get going on that right away as soon as we can. And we are looking, when we talk about the staffing strategy, I'll also have some discussion about that as well. So hopefully be patient and you'll hear more about it through the budget process.
So just so I have some clarity on that. So the public engagement and the design for Confederation is slated for 2025.
Correct.
Okay. So with follow up with construction, and that's usually a natural course of action. So 2026 would be the construction of that.
Shovel ready for 2026. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Just a
Welton.
minor detail on this page that Victoria Park Stairs and Allura are listed as two separate projects. So I was just curious why that is. One is a 2025 project and one is one of your 550 or something. Now I can't see them. Yeah. 2025 090 and then 550 0448. Yeah, maybe one just.
The one that is 550-0448 actually needs to be deleted out of here.
You're just making sure we read the whole spreadsheet.
Yeah. Okay.
Just to clarify, we moved that out into year 10. We are waiting for that project for some sort of funding source, and then we can bring it back in.
Okay. Any comments as pertains to this page? Yep. Okay. Councillor Craddock.
Thank you. And through you, just to circle back to Milburn Park, I remember the discussion around that shade. That was a big concern. So to have it pushed back, I'm not saying let's bring it up. I don't want any dirty looks, but is there any way to like mitigate or address those concerns? Just I know that there is the one bit, but there was the talk of the trees being planted or maybe an additional.
Well, let me take that back and get back to you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, questions as it pertains to page 11? Councillor Jefferson.
Thank you. Sorry. Through you, Mayor. Mine isn't about Parks and Rec. It's we're going into the vehicle placement at the bottom. And I just kind of have a question with we had a 2023-2024 schedule where we had everything put out. We're going to get them. Did we get all of our trucks and everything that we had kind of tendered for? Like, have we done receipt of them, or where do we stand with that? Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're coming close to facilitating all of those kind of backlog vehicles that we saw just by virtue of kind of the marketplace and the limitation on the availability of vehicles. But for a detailed conversation, I may perhaps defer to John, who might be a little bit closer to that.
Thanks for the question. We just received our final plow truck like Friday, plated yesterday. So we're in good position for the winter for plow trucks. We have two like landscape style trucks that are outstanding that purchasing is working on obtaining very soon through some legitimate but alternate paths, because the original vendor actually wasn't able to deliver this year. So looks like we're going to be able to get them this year. And I think we have like one trailer that should be here by the end of the year. So yeah, it's actually been great this year. So yeah.
Thank you. Through you. It's another question in regards to the vehicle replacement forecast, I guess. With looking at the estimated useful life, some of the vehicles say that they're 8 years or 7 years or anything like that. Have we determined if we were going to kind of look at them as an on-vehicle basis, like per vehicle, or are we just going to have like a general life expectancy for that fleet of cars? Thanks.
A timely question, or thank you, Councillor Jefferson. We are actually in the throes of looking at a fleet management policy now, which is why you're seeing a little bit of a delay in terms of the replacement schedules. We're just trying to layer those in and bring those back in tandem with one another. So those we're hoping to be available as part of the budget book and future deliberation processes. So we'll be taking the replacement schedule and the fleet management policy in tandem with one another.
Okay, if there's no other comments or questions, we'll leave this page and we'll head on to the last page, to page 12. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, through you. Just a question on the very top of page, first line, 205-9500, the fire vehicle replacement for 800,000 in 2025. This is appearing a little bit differently than it did last year, so just looking to get some more confirmation on what that item is.
So apparently that particular item is just a pumper that's gone up in value or up in cost. I should point out too, these, the bottom of page 11 and page 12, these essentially have supporting schedules, as I think you're all aware. There'll be a thick stack of paper that'll be in your budget books that will support these numbers. We typically provide those in the draft budget book. They're almost complete. These numbers are based on where those schedules are at right now, but we're still playing around a little bit with it because it does have implications on the operating budget, which impacts the tax rate.
Thank you. And just to clarify, I think last year that line said 60, and now it's going to like the 800. So I don't know if it's a different vehicle or if that's. I think it sounds like there'd be more than just a change in the price in that vehicle, but we can wait further clarification at a future meeting.
Yeah, we'll have more information when we bring forward the replacement schedules, but that is the complete replacement of a pumper at the Fergus fire station, approaching its 20-year useful life. And with fire vehicles, you have to keep within that useful life schedule.
Any other comments, questions as it relates to this page? Okay. I think we're finished this portion, so I'm going to read the recommendation that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington approve the inclusion of the 10-year capital forecast as outlined in Report Core 2024-61, dated November 5th, 2024, in the draft 2025 budget. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Evoy, seconder on that. Councillor McDonald, any further comments or questions? Yes, Councillor Wilton.
Thank you, Mayor Waters. I think Councillor Adams asked about this earlier, but I just want to make sure it's clear that some of these will change between now and the actual budget book and our meetings on December 3rd and 5th, I believe they are, and that we would still have the opportunity to comment, change. Yeah, so we're approving just the inclusion of this draft, correct?
Questions? Yes, Councillor Adams.
Again, just a question, keeping it very high level. The capital budget this year is quite significant from like the capital budget last year, but it was also forecasted to be significant as well last year. So, but it does look like there's about 6 million, I think, from the difference of like the forecasted 2025 budget last year to now. Obviously, we know the operations center has been a big impact at like a very high level. Could you just kind of let us know what those other big item impacts could be on this budget as from the forecast last year?
Difficult to pinpoint it, but I would suggest the largest contributor would be the operations center. We've also items kind of on the environmental side where we've seen some kind of things being added in the 2025. So if you look at some of those 2025 projects that perhaps you didn't have line of sight of before and you add those up, I would say cumulatively we get to a larger number, and that's to address more pressing capital needs that we perhaps didn't have line of sight of in prior years.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Okay, we had a first, seconder, seeing none. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. Also, it's time to adjourn. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Wilton, seconder on that, Councillor McDonald. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of adjournment? Thank you, everyone. Thank you, every staff and everyone who participated today and helping us move through this. We'll see you again soon.